Good morning, Raptor Freaks. Lexi Odds here. It's Sunday morning, and today we do a Sunday special report. And today's Sunday special report is all about the toxicity around the Raptors team again this season and looking at it in more detail. On Friday, great Raptors journalist Oren Weisfeld came out with a piece on Yahoo Sports Canada about the Toronto Raptors coaching staff, and it's very illuminating. If you haven't seen the article, I can put the link in the chat so you can go give him some traffic, give him some love, and because he's doing a good job of doing good sports journalism around the Raptors. Oren Weisfeld, Yahoo Sports. Basically, this article is, this season we've done a lot of speculating about why the team isn't connecting, about why it seems like the players aren't totally on the same page, why the team seems disjointed. And we naturally think, well, it must be some of the players. The players are not getting along. Some of the players don't fit. Maybe they don't have the same personalities. There's an old and a young difference between them. No, that was all bullshit. In fact, what we heard from Chris Boucher on his Hustle Play podcast last week was, if anything, this season made the players get closer as far as the core of the Raptors. These guys are more together as friends and as a unit because of the adversity. And it wasn't that they turned on each other, it was actually the coaches that turned on each other. And when you see the coaches turn on each other, you don't understand exactly the effect of it because it kind of comes out in a weird way, but it still does very much affect their winning and losing. When you have a feud or a toxic situation between coaches on a team and nobody's addressing it and nobody's doing anything about it, and it's just kind of, let's keep going, keep moving, but that problem is still there. Well, you're going to have problems with communication. You're going to have problems with how the team looks, with their organization on the court. You're going to have problems with different kinds of things. People said that people have been selfish this year. Well, maybe it wasn't the players. Some of the coaches have had weird agendas this season, including Nick Nurse. And in some ways, I'm going to kind of take the blame off of Nick Nurse, because in some ways, all right, it is his fault. It is his fault. And in general, it is his fault. And him getting fired, it absolutely was warranted for different reasons, if not just for that press conference before the Philadelphia game. That alone, to me, was enough to just fire him. But otherwise, there's other things that are his fault. And it really has to do with his friendship with Nate. Nate Bjorngren is an amazing coach for all kinds of different reasons. Nate Bjorngren is a champion. Nate Bjorngren was a part of our 2019 championship team. He was also a part of a G League championship for the Iowa Energy when Nick Nurse was the head coach, and he was the assistant coach on that team also. There's a certain business partnership, professional partnership between Bjorngren and Nurse from their roots in Iowa that has bonded and formed them together. In fact, in some ways, Nick coaches better when Nate is around. And the reason why is because Nate does a lot of the legwork. Nate does a lot of the busy work. Nate does a lot of like the very meticulous, detail-oriented kind of sussing things out and reporting and bringing information to Nick, and Nick decides it. And that is something that he's very valuable for, honestly. In fact, there's people laud Nate Bjorngren for his preparation skills, that this dude is a control freak, that this guy cares about every little minute detail, about every aspect of what the game plan is for the basketball game, for the team, what they're going to do, what the schemes are. He, in fact, when I went to the coach, and I'm going to refer to this event many times on the stream today. When I went to the coach's open house last year, I didn't realize how much it was important that I paid really close attention to everything going on there, because there were telltale signs there that the more I think about, with more understanding of what was happening this season, I can tell that things were already fucked up or kind of moving in that direction from there. Now, when I was at the coach's open house, Nate Bjorngren had to get okayed, had to okay Nick telling us some secret stuff about their game plans. It was like the coach wasn't even the coach in that moment. It was like Nick had to ask permission from Nate to be able to talk about certain things from our playbook with us at the coaches open house. I thought that was kind of fishy in a moment, in that moment there in some ways, but I was also kind of like, you know what? Well, Nate is this kind of guy. He's very meticulous. He's very like in charge kind of dude. Warren's piece on Yahoo on Friday describes, or they've described him as kind of being like, let's just put it this way. If Nick Nurse was Barack Obama or Joe Biden, uh, Nate McMillan would be his chief of staff. I mean, Nate Bjorkgren. Nate Bjorkgren would be his chief of staff. Sorry, I said Nate McMillan. That's not the right Nate. That kind of energy. It's like George W. Bush. He wasn't really running things in some ways when he was the president. It was more Karl Rove. Karl Rove was his chief of staff, and he was kind of the mastermind behind things and kind of really controlling things. And in some ways, the president is kind of like a figurehead and kind of just like a representative. Kind of, what I'm talking about. In some ways, presidents are not actually in charge. If y'all don't know that, they don't do a lot of the grunt work. They don't do a lot of the hard work. They have to be like the leader and stand in front of people and talk about what's happening. And kind of that, there's a lot of energy in that. And there's a lot of groundwork and stuff that's done behind the scenes by people like your chief of staff and other people that are on your staff. And well, Nate became like the chief of staff. Like if it was Trump, it would be Steve Bannon. And in some ways, he became a gatekeeper for information. He became a person that was kind of keeping people away from talking to Nick directly because he was such a busybody in the middle. He was in the middle and he said, well, if you want to talk to Nick, run it through me and I'll go tell him. He's too busy. He's too busy. Tell me and I'll tell him later. That's, that kind of shit is going on there. So in some ways, him being such a control freak, he really sunk his paws into like being involved in everything. That if there's something going on with the Raptors team, Nate had to be in the epicenter of it or the hub of like communication. If you want to talk to Nick, you got to talk to Nate first. So there's a lot of weird like power tripping. There's a very interesting article by Jake Fisher, who I'm not a very big fan of, that Oren alludes to from his time from Indiana. And it paints a much more bigger picture of Nate Bjorkgren and his personality and how it can cause problems on a team because he was the head coach. It all fell on him. And we hear more and more about his coaching style as a head coach and what he wanted to do. And he had some severe personality flaws. This is why he didn't even survive a year in Indiana as the head coach. That, he's been described as a couple things. There's, listen, they think that he's not genuine. When he came to Indiana, he had a very positive attitude. He came in very bubbly. He came in very like I'm a people person. I'm a smile. I really care about you and all this stuff. But a couple months into being the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, he kind of changed. He kind of turned into a dick. And what it is that, like, listen, he's very power oriented. It's very strange. And his understaff, like if there's assistant coaches underneath him on the Indiana Pacers or even training staff, any of those staff, he treats them like shit. And I'm not lying. Like he actually made one of the assistant coaches of the Indiana Pacers quit in the middle of the season because this is the thing. This is what he'll do in practice. And I saw this a little bit at the open practice because first of all, at the open practice, Nick didn't do jack shit. I said this, if y'all remember when I talked about this, Nick just stood back and watched everybody just do everything. And Nate ran the practice. Nate was the one barking orders. Nate was telling everybody where to go. Nate was the one who was doing it. And Nick just observed. He just sat back and watched. So this man was really running our team to a degree with Nick Nurse as the figurehead coach of our team. In some ways, Nate was doing the things for him, and Nick was on autopilot in some ways. Well, this is the pattern with Nate Bjorkgren. He'll be in practice, and he'll see an assistant coach working with the player, and he'll come in and check in with them on what they're doing on the court. And in some ways, if he doesn't like what the assistant coach is telling him and the player, he'll belittle the assistant coach in front of the player. And in fact, he's been described as humiliating and embarrassing people that work underneath him. That in some ways he doesn't have a sense or tact to how he speaks to people. And he has a blind spot that he just is such a competitive person that he's just but he will do it at the drop of a hat and it'll embarrass people that were underneath him. In fact, a lot of people didn't like him in Indiana because of this approach. Miles Turner, longtime Indiana Pacers center, who's been on that team forever, always rumored to be traded, had this to say about Nate Bjorkgren, that he has an ego, that he thinks he knows everything about the court of basketball, but he doesn't. And when he hit that wall in Indiana and realized that he didn't know what he was doing to a degree, he didn't come around and admit it. He just continued to blindly go forward with his ego, thinking that he knew what the fuck he was doing no matter what. And he didn't ask for help. And in some ways, Miles Turner looked at that as being his downfall with the Indiana Pacers, that he just was stuck in his own ego. He went in his own way. So we got to look at this whole pattern of Nate and Nick. You know, they're in Iowa guys. In some ways, that really did bond them, forged them together. And it's a very strong pairing. I'm not going to lie. It's very effective. It is a huge reason why we won the NBA championship. Nate Bjorkgren's drive behind the scenes and his meticulous attention to detail is very, very valuable to NBA teams. But he cannot be anywhere near the source of power. He cannot be the number one guy. He cannot be the right-hand man to the head coach, because he becomes toxic at that moment. He becomes a gatekeeper. He becomes somebody who's like worried about his own power. And by controlling communication between the coaches and the head coach, the players and the head coach, and everybody else, he keeps his power. And in some ways, that was more important to him this season. Now, you go about what I just told you about how he interacts with assistant coaches, understaff, like support staff, and belittles and embarrasses them and humiliates them in front of people. What if he did that shit to one of our coaches on our staff? You know, I'll tell you right now, Earl Watson has worked with Nate Bjorkgren extensively in the past. In fact, when Earl Watson was the head coach of the Phoenix Suns briefly, Nate Bjorkgren was one of the top candidates to take that job when they fired Jeff Hornacek at that time too. But they gave it to Watson, and they kept Bjorkgren around as an assistant for Earl. So in some ways, they have very much a working relationship, just like Nick and Nate did before. That Earl has been above him and worked with him before, and he knows his style. So I could tell from watching the way they sit on the bench. You'll see Nick's there, and he's got Nate on one side and Earl on the other side. Now, Earl could know very much that Nate is full of shit with this bullshit that I just described to you as far as communications. And I could see this, that Earl's like, you ain't pulling this shit on me, Nate. I'm talking directly to Nick. And that's why I'm sitting right next to him. I've got his ear. I will talk to him during the game. You don't have to fucking be involved in this shit. You know, every single little thing that Nick and I are talking about, why the fuck do you have to be in the middle of it, Nate? You know, so he's already had time working with Nate Bjorkgren to understand his quirks and to understand who he is. Earl knows that. But it could be as simple as something as like fucking Nate Bjorkgren saying something stupid to fucking Rico Hines at a practice or something. Maybe he went off on another one of the coaches and everybody saw it and it looked ugly and it looked stupid. I'm telling you, the toxic comes from Nate. That Nate is power hungry. Nate has an ego. Nate does not have a very good bedside manner with people. And this is why he got fired in Indiana. And, you know, this is also like, look at this for a second. All right. When he got fired from there, I wanted him to come back to Toronto, but I didn't realize that was stupid at that time, because in some ways it's not good that he's with this team. It's another thing, like exactly like what we talked about, where Nate and Nick are good for a very high caliber veteran team, not good for a development team. In some ways, they can't be around. He can't be around losing is basically what it is. Nate Bjorkgren has to be on a winning team, that wins consistently. Because if they lose and he starts getting critical and kind of like lashing out like he does on a losing team, then he causes more toxic. And I think that's part of what happened this year. You know, there's an interesting critique of Nate Bjorkgren from his time in Indiana, that one of the things that he did while he was a coach there was that he tried to make a system for his players to play that didn't have any intention or thinking about how the players are. That he made a structured system and he wanted to fit the players to the system instead of building a system that fit to the players. Does this sound familiar about our season this year? That maybe in some ways we had a system this year that didn't fit our players because the coaches were forcing it on us, because they were like, this is what you got to do. In particular, listen to this. They were saying, Miles Turner, once again, that Nate Bjorkgren in his 1 year with the Indiana Pacers forbid them from taking mid-range shots. That he had looked at the statistics and the Billy ball kind of stuff, and he found out that like the mid-range is death. It's not a good shot to take. And in fact, he punished the players in Indiana for even going near mid-range. Well, Miles Turner, as a vet and being on that team forever, was like, fuck this guy. This is stupid. If I have a fucking open shot and I'm good at mid range, I'm going to fucking take a mid range. So he would get mad at the Indiana Pacers. In fact, he would punish them for taking mid range shots in games because it didn't fit his system and his rules for how he wanted to run the team. So think about that in relation to our not using the mid range on our team for the most part, and in relation to the pick and roll, even with Jakob and stuff. So it's like if you have a busybody, a power hungry control freak in the middle of your team that's not even the head coach, and he's not in check. First of all, Nick's not putting him in check, and then he's just running the way he does. You can see where there could be some problems like this. I think that that's very telling that he tried to use a system in Indiana that didn't fit their player personnel, and he didn't have the vision to see that didn't fit, and he kept pushing it even though it didn't work and it was not working. He still was stubborn. It's like, no, you will learn my system and you will play it, players, instead of coming up with something that fit what they do and who they are. He said, no, this is my system. I came in. I'm not even thinking about who you guys are. You guys play my system. Well, that's not the fucking smartest way to run your team. And if that's the way that our team was ran in any kind of way this season, like the 1 year he was in Indiana, well, that would paint a lot of the picture why we were fucking shitty like we were. Because they made a system without intentions of the players that we're using. They just said, this is the system. Y'all got to fit it. That's crazy, isn't it? Like everything I'm telling you guys about this right now, does this make more sense why we did not look good this year and why maybe Nate Bjorkgren was a big part of the epicenter of what went wrong this year? One of the things Masai said at the end of the season was, I'm going to have to be more closely involved. And I think what it is that this problem with Nate Bjorkgren and problems with the coaching staff were festering the whole entire season. Think about what Earl got suspended for and asked not to come to New York for. Was it a conflict with Nate Bjorkgren? In some ways, Nick is very protective of Nate, and he stood up for him. When he got fired from Indiana, and they said all kinds of stuff about his bedside manner as a coach, the things that I was just talking about, he came out in defense of him and he said, these are all lies. He's been a great coach. Everybody who's ever played for him will say that. Fred VanVleet said, if you don't like Nate Bjorkgren, there's something wrong with you. Well, I can get what they're saying. And maybe they like his edge and the way he is because it does drive up competitive edge. But if you're not the right personality to deal with that kind of personality, you can be very destructive also. That also maybe they have a blind spot because they didn't get treated badly by him because they're not support staff or under assistant coaches that, they don't get dealt with, disrespected. In fact, it sounds like Nate Bjorkgren does not treat the players like that. He only treats the staff like that. He treats the understaff very, very badly. In fact, he will go off on somebody, yell at them and belittle them and embarrass them to the point that they will quit their job and leave their dream job to be a coach in the NBA. That is crazy. Isn't that crazy? I mean, that's the gist of what I wanted to talk about today. And if we really apply some of the stuff with the characteristics of this, we can maybe understand why this is a problem. There's body language on the court, but with the coaches that told this. A lot of the stuff when you see Nate Bjorkgren move around the team when the cameras aren't on before the game, I watch this kind of shit. If I go to a Raptors game, I go in there and I sit 90 minutes before the game and I watch everybody. I watch what Bobby Webster is, who he's talking to, who he sits down and has a little conversation with. I watch the assistant coaches and how they come out and prepare. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of people that kind of freeze out Nate Bjorkgren, that they don't want to talk to him. They maybe avoid him a little bit. You could tell with a little body language. They're like, I don't want to talk to him. They said that TJ Warren, he was on the Pacers when he came to coach them. He said he requested a trade because he had played for Nate in Phoenix and he hated him. There's certain people in this league that do not want to be around Nate Bjorkgren because he's toxic. And Nick kept him around because in some ways he helps him. Now, when he went to Indiana, we were in Tampa. We were in Tampa that season. We had a really hard season that year. We had lost Chris Finch in the middle of that season, who was kind of the new Nate Bjorngren. And then when he got fired, well, I was like, well, look, good. We can get Nate back. But I didn't realize that's a folly. That was a bad idea to bring Nate back. And in fact, it kind of signaled things when he didn't have the real title assistant coach. He's only a consultant. He wasn't officially hired by the Toronto Raptors to come back. It was Nick Nurse using him on his own personal as a consultant, not as a true head assistant coach. So there's a lot of weird red flags about this whole situation. And in some ways, the friendship of Nick Nurse with Nate Bjorngren may have directly caused Nick Nurse to get fired. And I know for damn sure Nate Bjorngren ain't going to be coming back to our team next year for sure. That in fact, he may be the biggest problem that we had this season, that he was the biggest problem in the middle. Because like I said, if he's gatekeeping information, if there's assistant coaches trying to talk to Nick about how to run the team, and he's like, no, I'll tell him, I'll take care of it. He can control whether Nick hears that shit. And these coaches may not get their voice heard, and they may have very valid things to tell him to change the team to play better. So think about it that way. When there's a manipulative person in your friend group that kind of tries to be the one in the middle and the hub, and it has to be in a part of everything and has to be controlling and stuff like that. Those kind of type of people. This is what Nate is in Nick Nurse's world. As much as he helps Nick with organizing and doing everything that he does, he has bad qualities also. And it may be in the losing of this season, the bad qualities reared their ugly head because they can happen real quick with him. It's like he's like night and day. He's been described as a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde, for Pete's sake. The way he came into the Indiana Pacers, he was like, Dr. Jekyll, oh, this guy's awesome. He really knows basketball. Like, he knows his X's and O's. He really knows what he's fucking talking about when he talks about basketball. But he doesn't know how to fucking talk to people that work under him. And that's a telltale sign right there. You can cause bad vibes just by cussing out a fucking strength and conditioning coach. You can have bad vibes by yelling at the towel girl, for Pete's sake. That kind of shit is not good for your team. And when you have that kind of personality around, it's weird because Nick said at the beginning of the season, if you're a coach on my staff and you don't put out good energy, I don't want you. I'm going to fire you. And maybe in some ways, maybe this was a warning to Nate. Like, you better fucking be good on my team and be in your best behavior, because if you don't, I'll get rid of you, Nate. And maybe it was a warning the other way. Maybe the energy was bad because they didn't like Nate and there was bad energy coming from Earl. Who knows? The fact that Earl is not showing up on the candidate list for our head coaching job shows that he may have been part of the toxic in the middle of all this. I've wondered about like his own personal aspirations with head coaching. In some ways, maybe he in his head thought, well, Masai's grooming me to be in here next with Nick. If this gets more and more like a dumpster fire, maybe I can just slip into his seat after the end of the season. Maybe there was part of that was, I don't know, Earl Watson's character is probably very good and he's fine. And maybe I'm just speculating, but the possibilities of this are there. In some ways, he's the kind of person that like doesn't take a fucking punch to the mouth. He'll punch back. And if somebody's fucking with him in the staff, I'm sure he would fuck with them right back. So it could very well be that there was a Nate versus Earl, and Nick was literally sitting right in between them while this shit was going on. It could be that Nate fucking said some side ass shit to fucking Rico, and Earl was like, fuck, what the fuck are you talking to my partner, Rico Hines, like this shit? You not know who he is in the summertime with the Rico runs? And Rico's like, I'm not even gonna, Rico seems like he's not involved in this directly, but he may have been partly involved in this. Who knows? It's very interesting stuff. Now that I've talked for 25 minutes, I'll go ahead and read some of y'all's comments on how you feel about this situation and the information that's been illuminated in the last 3 days from Oren Weisfeld's great expose on Yahoo Sports, talking about this particular assistant coach for our Raptors. Not anymore, thank God. All right, let's see. All right, race mode's in here first. I'm still shocked Nick Nurse got fired. This is another Lexathon. I'm looking forward to today's show. You gonna keep me here all day? That's all right. It's Sunday. I got the time. If you want to talk, Edmund, we'll talk. G saying, especially People were so quick to blame players, especially specific ones where it was. Well, that's what they want to think. But logically, that's usually the case. Is the first place to look is the players. But in some ways, I'm actually really happy that it could be like, think about this. They shut out Nick by the end of the season. Maybe they didn't respect Nick because he was letting Nate go run wild, and they didn't see him get punished. Maybe they were kind of like, what the fuck? This dude just was out of pocket. He just treated one of our support staff, humiliated them, said all kinds of crazy shit in front of us, and it was ugly. And it like made me feel icky. And now Nick's not even going to punish him. Like he gets to just do this. It could be shit like that. And then the players are like, I don't respect Nick anymore because he can't keep his bulldog in check. It's that kind of shit. It could be exactly like that. Now, half this stream is speculation, but a lot of this is from reported fact also. And we can extrapolate from certain characteristics about behavioral things that he's done and think, well, this could have been part of the mix of why things went wrong. I mean, it makes total sense, especially because if it's a losing environment, the worst and weakest links of your organization will come out the worst. And I think that's what had to do with it here. Nako's here. Good to see Nako the Nacho. Jamal Murray is fucking great. And I feel like I've gotten whiffs of Nurse's toxic communication throughout the years. Stop sending me little guards. Nurse said this during Tampa. Well, I mean, Nick's got a cockiness to him, and he should. He has to have that to be excellent and be at the level that he's at. I mean, those little kind of comments are kind of bullshit. And in fact, I agreed with him at that. That makes sense. We were sick of get Malachi. We have to have Kyle, Fred, Malachi. Why can't we get larger guards? And Masai listened because he drafted Scotty. So I mean, I don't get that. The toxic communication of Nick is more putting his players under the bus in an interview, like kind of coming at them in an interview when it's not necessary. You can handle that behind closed doors. You could talk to the player that way. You don't need to publicly humiliate them with a camera and a microphone in a television network. And that's the thing that pissed me off. It's like, take care of this in house. Maybe he's not able to talk to them directly. So he has to talk to them through the TV. And that's horrible too, because that means he doesn't have the ability to communicate to them privately without getting the press involved. He has to use the press to talk to them. That was one of the most toxic things about Nick Nurse, was calling out his players toxically after the games in certain ways. Isaac saying, like and subscribe, good folks. Thank you, Isaac Campbell, the benevolent Isaac Campbell in the house. Jimmy's here, the Pope of Positivity, Jimmy Pope. Sup, Lex, and my fellow Raptor freaks. Been a minute. I've been busy with work. Can't come to the streams as much. Hope everybody's doing good. Jimmy, you know what? No worries, no excuses. It doesn't matter. We love you. And when you come back, it's just like a boomerang. You guys, I'll throw y'all out. You go and gone, do whatever you do for a couple months, weeks, days, whatever, and come on back when you're ready and you have time to just check in with the Raptor Freak. There's no problem with that. I stream a lot of hours every week, and everybody watches every single hour. I appreciate the hell out of you, but it's not mandatory. You take as much of the Raptor Freak channel as you want, Jimmy. We're always here. It's like home. You can come home whenever you want, my friend. There you go. G saying, people were so quick to blame players. Scotty posting the Leafs win. Go Leafs and go Scotty. This is what I'm seeing on Instagram last night. That the Scotty very much celebrating the Leafs' big first round win, and they got out in the streets. This is crazy. Like in some ways, the Knicks and the Leafs are the same franchise in their respective sports. And we see just a little bit of success for the Knicks and a little bit of success for the Leafs, and everybody's out there celebrating like they won the championship. Well, you deserve it. You go ahead and get out there and do that, Leafs Nation. I was not out there with y'all. No, I'm not. But, don't shoot your shot too soon. You guys can get further, and maybe you get all the way and get that Lord Stanley's Cup back here in Toronto. But it was nice to see everybody having a good time last night and celebrating. But yeah, and I'm glad Scotty's invested in the Leafs and how they're doing. A lot of the players on the team, the Raptors, are just celebrating guys getting drafted into the NFL. Some of the guys that are friends of Ron Harper Jr., Koloko, Scotty, putting on blast different guys who just got drafted in the NFL draft this weekend. Could very well be personal friends of theirs that they're very happy to see get drafted and go to the next level. But it is nice to see the Raptors celebrating the Leafs getting past the first round against the Tampa Bay Lightning. It is a very big deal. In fact, the Leafs did something for the first time ever in the history of the NHL. They won 3 road games in the first round in overtime, and that nobody's ever done that in the history of the NHL ever. They won 3 of their 4 wins in that series were on the road and wins in overtime on the road. So that's a cool little stat about things. And I'm glad to see Scotty loves the Leafs and he's rooting for Toronto, baby. Yeah, you go, Scotty. So happy to see you with your post on Instagram. All right, let's see. Country Kong saying, good morning, Raptors freaks. I'm excited to read Oren's report on the coaching staff. It's surprising to hear the dissent came from the coaches. I did find Nick and Nate to be controlling authoritarians. Well, that energy really comes from Nate. In some ways, Nick is kind of passive to him. Like I said, at the coaches' challenge, it seemed like Nate was actually our head coach because he ran the practice. He had to give him permission to be able to talk to us. Nick asked for permission from Nate. It's crazy. In some ways, some of the things that Earl said about Nick at that time were kind of funny and weird. And when I think about it, he called him a genius, a crazy genius. And talking about, I love sitting next to him and seeing what scheme he's going to come up for how to stop the superstar on the other team defensively. He's like a mad genius. He goes into his laboratory and he figures out the concoction to stop somebody like Jokic or Embiid. And that was something that he really liked about him. I'm really thinking about that day and what it looked like, the optics of it all. And I'm thinking more and more about little things that I saw that day that kind of led to where we're at now with them. And it really is. Nate ran that team that day. Seriously. Like Nick stood back and just watched, observed, and Nate Bjorngren was the one talking the whole time during that whole practice, telling guys where to go, which drill to do next, how to switch it up and stuff like that. And Nick just was sitting back proud like a dad or something. Like it was really weird, really weird. Definitely read that article, Country Kong. It's very, very interesting. And then read the other one, the one about the Pacers time too. The one from 2 years ago, from when he got fired in Indiana and why. Because it really does paint the whole picture. It's his personality. It's just who he is. He's really, really valuable for the X's and O's, the coaching, theory, the smarts on the coaching stuff is so valuable. It's just he doesn't have good personal skills with people. Fiercey's here. Good to see Fiercey. Saw Sarah. Good morning, fam. If the coaches turned on each other, of course it would trickle down to the players' morale and motivation. If Nate and Nick were that close, why was Earl Watson sitting up front at games? Well, it could be a couple things. It could be that Masai had directed Nick to really take Earl as his apprentice and to have him right close to him. Now, if you watch the way they'd interact in games, Nate was the one with the clipboard. Nate was the first one that came to Nick and talked to him first, almost all the time. Nick and Nate were always first to talk to, and the other guys were secondary when come over. But Earl definitely had Nick's ear without Nate in the middle of it. And I know it's because Earl knows how Nate operates. And that's why he's saying, I ain't fucking having this jabroni in between us. You're going to talk to me directly. And that's why you could see very often during the game, you see Earl talking into Nick's ear, talking straight to him. Well, maybe the rest of the coaches couldn't talk straight to Nick. They had to go through Nate Bjorngren. And it's all holding power. It's a weird power trip kind of shit. It's really, really weird. Really, really weird. G saying, I heard Watson was undercutting Nick too, and this group wanted him to be head coach. This may be pure speculation and BS rumors. Maybe he was not happy with Nate now that you bring this up. That sounded like I was thinking that too, that it could be that Watson on the down low was trying to cause a mutiny with Nick Nurse on the down low. And this may be why Watson is not being considered in some ways, because he may have been part of the problem because he was trying to turn the team against Nick. It's a very weird situation. It's a very, very weird situation. There may have been guys on the team that were Earl guys, and they were kind of acting in that kind of way, but probably not. They all, the guys are really smart. We have a really good group of dudes. They get along real good. They're all team oriented. They listen to their coach and respect their coach. And it's amazing that they did all that kind of stuff. We're absolute professionals with the unprofessionalness on their coaching staff this year. In some ways, that is really fucking awesome. And that's maybe why Masai doubled down on this core. He's like, fuck, these guys are going through this bullshit right now, and they're still being perfect. And I love these guys for going through. I feel bad because our bullshit all around them. But, for damn, they're not the problem. That's for sure. It's the damn coaches. And Masai saying he wants to be more hands on. It may be that he's like, he left it to Nick Nurse to control his coaching staff and to keep them all in check, but he didn't. He was lackadaisical about that. And that's part of the reason why Masai Ujiri said at the end of the year, I need to be more hands on. I need to be more involved. I need to be more in the know and see what the fuck is happening with my coaches. It may not even be the players he's worried about as far as being hands on. People are saying, oh, maybe some of the coaches that are interviewing for this job won't like it because Masai is going to be more involved and more hands on. And they don't want Nick Nurse had free reign. Well, this is the fucking problem with Nick Nurse having free reign. If he has a buddy he buddies with and he like favors and he lets him run ramshot over things and he's a toxic problem on the team and nobody's checking him, Masai needs to come in and say, look, Nick, I don't like the situation with Nate and you need to fix things or I'm going to fire Nate. He let him just go on autopilot and run this whole team, even with all these problems. And Masai was just not dealing with them because it's not what he normally does. He said, Nick, it's your team. You run it. I trust you. Well, he shouldn't have trusted him. That this is part of the issue, that Masai could have came in and fired the problem coach this season if he had been more active. And that may be why he said what he said, is that if I'd known this was this toxic, that you'd sent Earl home on this trip and that there was this kind of friction between these coaches, I would have fired one of them already this summer to fix the problem. I mean, I would have fired this season. I would have fired one of them in the middle of the season, but he didn't. He trusted Nick, and Nick didn't deal with it right. He had a blind spot, partly because of his friendship with Nate Bjorngren, and boom, this is the perfect storm of how this happens. And it's so crazy. And I guess it makes more sense. We can scapegoat the hell out of Bjorngren. I'm sure a lot of people won't mind that because in some ways that is probably what actually happened, that he does need to be scapegoated and that Nick is just guilty by association and allowing him to do what he did in some ways. It wasn't really Nick Nurse's personality. It was his assistant coach's personality that was causing all the trouble. It's crazy. Let's see. Cool Cat saying, good morning, Raptor Free crew. Just finished working overtime. Decide I will stop by for a few minutes, then head off to sleep. Oh, Cool Cat. I hope you had a really good sleep on this Sunday morning. Kind of a little hazy and dark out, but this is the perfect sleeping weather. Nice and calm after, maybe you had a really late night with the Leafs victory and all that kind of stuff. All the off court really messed up our players. Nick Nurse's lack of personal skills and managing his staff. Yes. In some ways, there were some dissent in certain ways. And I bet Masai is going to be very meticulous with how the next coach builds their staff coming in. Now, I went and researched Becky Hammon way more yesterday. And honestly, you know who she is like? We said she's like Kyle Lowry. We said she's like Allen Iverson. No, you know who she's the most like. And this would be very interesting, this dynamic, if she does come and coach us, is Fred VanVleet. She was undrafted, just like Fred. She did not have a spot. She walked on to the New York Liberty team, and they were expecting to cut her every week, but they couldn't because she kept making shots. As they said, I'm going to cut her when she misses, and she never missed. So she made the team, and not only that, she walked on, made the team, and she's a top 25 WNBA player of all time. You know how they do the top 75 for the NBA because it's 75 years? Well, the top 25, Becky Hammon is one of the top 25 WNBA players of all time as a walk-on, as an undrafted walk-on, as a slight little guard. She is Fred VanVleet. And in some ways, that commonality between her and Fred could be very valuable if she does decide to take our job. I don't even think it's a question about us. It's like we should just hire her. We should offer the job. And then we can see if Becky Hammon wants to walk away from Las Vegas and take the job here, because in some ways she really probably won't. You look at all the footage from the Las Vegas Aces last season, and there's a lot. They have a show like Open Gym, and it's really dramatic and awesome. And all the stuff they're saying on there is this is the beginning of the Becky Hammon era. This is the beginning of a dynasty. This is the beginning of a mega team in the WNBA. This is the beginning of this and this and this. And in some ways, the script writing for the WNBA does not go along with us, as they put it, poaching the head coach of the Las Vegas Aces. That in some ways, even if it's breaking a glass barrier, even if it's something that's historic and all this kind of stuff, in some ways, they have already planned her future to be in Las Vegas. They built this brand new state-of-the-art facility that's an NBA level that is fantastic. In fact, some of the NBA players are saying it's a top 5 facility if it was in the NBA. They've done all this planning with her. And that in some ways, her just up and leaving after one season and coaching them to a championship would be like Kawhi with us. Seriously, it would be exactly like Kawhi Leonard coming here, winning one championship, and then taking off all of a sudden for greener pastures. And in some ways, I could see her not taking the job just because people have already counting on her in Las Vegas. That what she said in some of the interviews. I really went on a deep dive with looking at her and what she's all about, and I learned so much about her. She's an amazing person, first of all, and if we were lucky enough to get her to coach our team, we would win and we would do very, very well. I have no doubt in that. That's why I'm saying if she's available and she'll take the job, just give it to her, Masai. Pay her exactly what you were going to pay Nick this year. Don't fuck around with her. Don't even try and pay her less. Give her exactly what you were going to give Nick this year that's on contract for him. If she's willing to take the job, we need to jump on it and let her just take it. But that's the thing. It's really up to her. It's like she has two options. She could go either way. And I love the way she handled the questions with the reporters. This is how Nick should have been. This shows that she's a much more mature professional coach than Nick Nurse is. Because she said, no, I'm not going to take away from my responsibilities with the aces. We're talking about the ladies right now, not the boys. And I love that. I love that. That's exactly how she should be. She's got her priorities and she understands where she's at. And she's not getting ahead of herself and on the beach contemplating the last 10 years. That's what I'm saying. So we'd be lucky to get her as our coach. There's no telling if that's going to happen because in some ways she needs to continue with this Aces team. I really do believe that to a degree, but it's up to her ultimately. That's the thing. If she wants to do what she wants to do and come here, don't get in her way, WNBA. Don't get in her way, Las Vegas, and don't get in her way, fans of the WNBA also. Because this is good. This will be a good thing. And it's what she wants. That's the most important thing. We don't give a shit about people that write about the WNBA want. We don't give a shit about what I want. We don't give a shit about every Joe Schmo on the street or what they think, whether a woman can do the job or not. We don't give a shit about any of that. The only thing we give a shit about is whether Becky wants the job or not. And that's ultimately all that matters. It's up to Becky. If Becky wants the Toronto job and Masai gives it to her and she takes it, hallelujah for Raptors fans. But otherwise, we can't be upset if she doesn't because her shop is already set up and she's got a destiny already laid out in front of her that has nothing to do with Toronto. But you never know. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to suss this out. And part of me is really leaning to where she's not going to take the job here, even if we offer it to her, because there's a lot of people depending on her already. And she has a huge amount of loyalty. And that's something. Like one of the things she values is when somebody says they need her. Like San Antonio, Popovich came to me and said he needed me on his staff. And I felt touched. I felt needed. So I went there. Well, Vegas told her that they needed her. So she felt touched. And she has loyalty to that. So if Masai tells her, we need you here, and she feels touched, and she's like, whoa, but she may have to wait. Like, well, I've already kind of made, a commitment to Las Vegas Aces. That all these people down here were really looking forward to me continuing to coach their team. They want the ability to go for a dynasty. They want ability to go for more championships. And they want to have the best coach that they can possibly have. And that's me. That's what I'm saying. That's really the whole situation at this point. It's up to Becky. If Masai's going to give her the job, I love her to take it, but it's not even on us. It's up to her. And in some ways, the writing's already there. I love the interview with DeMar DeRozan. Something she said about DeMar. She said, DeMar DeRozan is one of my favorite players that I've ever coached. And, he's a big, huge black guy from Compton. And you think me, a lesbian from Utah or something, we'd have nothing in common. Well, she got to know them on the personal level, and she realized that they have way more in common than she thinks. That's the thing. You have a competitive heart and a competitive spirit. Friends of birds of a feather flock together. Norman and Fred. The reason why Norman and Fred are such good friends is they found that shared passion for winning and trying to be the competitive spirit and all that stuff. That's the same thing that put Kyle Lowry and Fred on the same page. Well, it's the same thing that puts Becky Hammon on the same page with DeMar DeRozan. That the more she talked to NBA players as an assistant coach of the Spurs, she found out that we're all the same, that we are competitors. We like to play at a high level and we like to win. And that drive in her is the same as in DeMar DeRozan. So she's really good at finding things that are in common with the players, even if they're NBA players, that, that she won't have any trouble relating to them or talking to them. She really won't. Really, really crazy, cool, interesting stuff about her. She's an amazing person, first of all. And we would be so, so lucky if she coached the Toronto Raptors. But I don't know if we'll be that lucky. Unfortunately, I don't know if we will be, being honest. Monique's here. Good to see the super fan, Monique Lawrence, the greatest. Always happy to see Mo. Good morning, everyone. The story is wild on all fronts. I don't see Nate Bjorkgren coaching after this. In some ways, yeah. He may have been dead to the league overall for the most part after Indiana, as far as nobody's going to try and get him as a head coach for sure. And then like Nick's like, all right, you're my friend and I really like working with you and you do really help me because you're like my right-hand man. You do a lot of the legwork. You're so organized. You get so meticulous with details and you care so fucking much. It's good to have you around. But at what cost, Nick? At what cost? And was Nate the downfall? Partly of you not being the head coach of the Toronto Raptors anymore. There's Nick is still the head coach of Team Canada, and he will be. But you know what? There's something signaling that he may not be the coach of Team Canada for much longer. They came out with the pools for the next level of competitive play to qualify for the Olympics, and Canada got a horrible pool. In fact, they're going to have to beat France and Spain to get to the qualifier. Now, it works really shitty. It's like only 2 teams from the Americas qualify from this tournament to make it into the Olympics. And the U.S., you could pencil them in right away. They got a really favorable draw. They've got kind of a cakewalk to walk right through this tournament that's coming up to get their spot in their Olympic thing. Of course, they want them to be there for sure. In some ways they should be that way about Canada also, but no, you know what they're doing? They're stacking the odds against us. They're going to make it really hard for Canada to qualify for the Olympics. And we may not be in the Olympic team this year or this cycle. And that may mean, Nick coaches the head coaching stuff for the Team Canada this summer, but they're done. They're not going to play next summer. And he's just done as our head coach for Team Canada this summer because they're basically going to have to do better than Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Mexico, all the other countries other than the U.S., and how far they get in the tournament. And some of those other teams are in better brackets where they could probably get to the next round. In fact, we have to beat France right off the bat just to even try and qualify. So in some ways, Team Canada is doomed already. That even with our amazing talent and who we are, this may not be the cycle that's coming up because of such a horrible draw for this tournament this summer. This tournament will all happen in August. This stuff will be going down then. And of course, we will be covering it very closely. But yeah, Canada got a horrible draw for this FIBA tournament that qualifies us for Olympics. And we have to beat other teams from the Americas, including the States, and only 2 spots are available. So it's like the States get 1, and we got to try and get the other one. We got to be better than every single other team from the Americas in that tournament and get higher placement in that tournament. And we have big roadblocks early in the tournament. Like we could get eliminated the first round by a team like France. And then the second round, we got Spain in front of us. And we know Spain's the EuroLeague champions, and we know what a powerhouse they are. So Team Canada's program is not going to do well going into this. And I'm going to predict we're not going to make the Olympics because of different things. It could be part of the toxic around Nick. It's going to be part of this problem. So, oh man, it sucks. It sucks. And it could be the writing's on the wall with him and Team Canada also, partly because of this draw. Oh my gosh. All right, let's keep going. Sheer Khan's here. Good morning, Rapid Freak family. People have to realize that every leadership team becomes stale after a while, and it takes a lot to maintain chemistry. Not everyone can have what Spurs, Heat, and Warriors cultivated over the years. Well, you have to have a hands-on approach. You can't be like lackadaisical and just let it go. If you're going to be a people manager, Masai Ujiri, you're going to have to manage your people and really stay in touch with the pulse of your team and what's going on and who may be doing this and who may be doing that and where there may be issues or drama. And that is on Masai for that he let them do whatever the fuck. And he kind of let them just kind of run things. And he didn't realize that it was bad. And now he's going to have a little more oversight. I don't think he'll be on the new coach's ass too much. It's just that he's going to take care of certain things. And it may very well be keep making sure the vibes are strong and good and positive and not toxic. Fiercely saying, okay, I never paid attention to Nate. I always saw Earl beside him. My bad. Well, he was on the other side and he was definitely always right around Nick. That's what I'm saying. Even his body language and how much he clusters around Nick is very kind of like sheepdog herdish. Like it's like he's herding sheep and he's the one who's kind of like always up near next to him. Like he's got to be in the middle of everything. That is part of it. Guardian saying at this point, I really am only concerned that we get a quality head coach and quality staff under him or her. I said that back in December. There was internal issues with this team. Yeah. Yeah. Listen, if I argued with you then, it's because I didn't want to believe it. And the whole purpose of this channel, Guardian Transit, is to stay positive and keep moving positive with the Raptors. So the toxic, I'll ignore it until it's confirmed. And when we find out more in the realness of it, like today and talking about it, then we'll talk about it. But in the middle of it all, I want to speculate and keep my ears. No, 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 that's not true. And if there is a fire, hopefully Masai comes in and puts it out. But that didn't happen this year. And that's part of the problem. Is like we figured out why there was a system failure. And well, we're going to change the system to catch the failure and fix it before that kind of shit happens. In fact, this may be a very weird new kind of way that a team could go shitty, like the assistant coaches having fights and not being good with each other is a really weird toxic because normally it's players, maybe it's player and coach, maybe it's the head coach, but when you get to the assistant coach level and that's actually where all the problems were coming from, that's what I'm saying. That's not normal. Normally the head coach is strong enough that if there are assistant coach problems, he takes care of them. But there was obviously a blind spot here and maybe a little favoritism for his Iowa buddy. And that may have been part of the problem right here. Jimmy saying the amount of missed open layups in crunch time I saw this season made me sick. Phil Jackson would have even had trouble. Players win games, too many opportunities. They messed up. Jimmy, I mean, I get what you're saying. You say, okay, the players play the game, the coaches only do so much, but they're the platform, they're the foundation, they're the springboard for their success. And if that springboard is instead of springing them forward, it's holding their ankle as they try to jump, well, they're going to miss a layup. That's what I'm saying. The disorganization of our team was very evident. And there could have been people doing manipulative things for ego reasons, as far as with communication and planning and how it's working. It could very well be an assistant coach like John Goodwillie comes to Nate Bjorngren and says, hey, I have a really good idea to fix this problem with what our team's doing right now. And Nate's like, okay, let me look at that. And instead of showing to Nick, he just kills it. He doesn't even fucking show him. That's what I'm saying. There's a problem with that kind of gatekeeping with communication on teams. You don't want it. You want open, flowing, free communication. If there's somebody who's trying to control who can talk to who, that's a big, big problem. That's not open communication, and there will be failures because there may have been something that John Corbaccio or Nate Mitchell or somebody else on the staff wanted to tell Nick, and Nate was like, no, this isn't worth it. It's not going to like this, and I'm not even going to bother his time. That kind of shit could have been going on. So, you got to prepare the team and listen, the vibes aren't right. They see people fighting behind the scenes. It's kind of like being a kid and being a household with parents that fight. That's kind of where they were at. They're kind of like, oh my God, this shit again with Nate and Earl. Oh my God. And that's part of why, like, they're saying stuff like, we just tried to be professional. We just tried to stay together this season. We didn't have any problems with each other. There's other people on this team that have problems with each other, and that was part of the problem. Listen, I know what you're saying. It's the players that do what they do on the court. But if it's uncomfortable, if it's not fun to be around the team, if it's weird on the team, as Chris put it, why the fuck would they try so hard to extend their season? In some ways, maybe they missed free throws on purpose because they did not want to go past Chicago. Maybe they did want to get rid of the problem and make it fail really big. And the players calculators like, well, if we fucking lose to Chicago in the play-in, maybe Nick will get fired and then Nate will be gone. That could have been part of the thinking and what fucking happened at the end of the season with why they slouched is because if we succeed, he'll look good and we'll continue with him. And then we'll have more of this bullshit next year. No, let's fucking play horrible, have a failure and make them fire Nick. And I think that may have been part of the thinking in all this. If you get past Chicago and you keep going, he looks good. And it's like, that's not the encouraging way that we want to go. I know it's kind of messed up. You don't want to slouch or lose on purpose. But does that make sense what I'm saying? If it's already toxic and you don't want to encourage them to keep the coach? Monique saying, "Good morning, everyone. This story is something I don't see Nate Bjorkgren coaching." Yeah, we read that one already. Not to be mean, but I think about it. Yeah, no, this dude, he may be good at coaching different levels. He may need to go coach college. He could get away with the shit he does in college, especially if he's just the end all be all top guy. Although, who the fuck's going to want to be his support staff if he yells at them and humiliates them in front of other people? That's maybe something he needs to work on is before he does coaching anywhere else, is how he treats people. Maybe he needs to go and get some counseling on that. And maybe they'll be like, Nate, you can't do this anymore. You have a blind spot with your people person skills. You need to be a little bit more like not so condescending, not so like insulting or yelling. Because that's basically what he would do. He's like, "What are you, stupid? Why would you do that with him? You need to do it this way. What are you doing? Come here." No, you don't shoot from the left. And when you're in that position, you come from the right. I can't believe you're on our staff. What the fuck are you? Who are you? He could be saying shit like that to them in front of the players. He's not dissing the players. He's not attacking the players. He's attacking underling staff. And that is a personality deficiency. When you attack the people that are support staff or the people that are assistants, yeah, that's not good. That's toxic. Cowboy saying, "Good morning, Lex," and the Raptor Freaks. Bam to Cowboy. Bam, 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 bam. G saying, "This is very informative, Lex. Had no idea about the Pacers and Nate and stuff." Yeah. That year really tells us the most about it because it was his show. It was his kit and caboodle. He was the end all be all. They thought, our championship year will get the number one from Nick Nurse, and the Pacers can have their own Nick Nurse. And that's why they got him. And like I said, he came in like a charmer. He came in, they thought he was one of the most positive people they'd ever met. And then, like a couple months into the job in Indiana, it all turned south and he turned into such an asshole. That's a very interesting thing. They felt like they didn't even know this person anymore. It's like, you're not the fucking person we interviewed for this job and gave the job to. You're some sort of crazy maniac otherwise. So, Carlos saying, "Morning, fellow freaks and Lex." Good morning to you, Carlo JS. One of my favorite Raptor freaks, showing up all the time, coming in with the nice comments and stuff. Carlo, you're a badass. I hope you're having a great weekend. Nameless is saying, hang on, let me see what Nameless is saying here. It jumped ahead, of course, and I got to get back to where I am in my place in the chat so I don't miss any of the comments. Nameless is saying, "The Leafs are back, baby. Screw the Raptors." What? Wait, no. I might give you a strike for that. Don't say screw the Raptors. The Raptors are done. Don't even bring them into this. Leafs, Raptors, separate. Let the Leafs have their success and be very happy about it, but don't denigrate the Raptors just because of that. This is always a Raptor space. This is not the Leaf Freak, so I'm not going to get all crazy and jump in the street and paint my face blue. No, I'm not. Just kidding, y'all. Hockey still sucks. He turned it around right then. Listen, let's not diss hockey. Hockey's fantastic. It's a great sport. It's a Canadian pastime, and there's a lot of good things about it. And I'm happy for this city. I really do want to see the Leafs bring that cup home, baby. Bring that cup home to Toronto, baby. Yes. In some ways, it'll be really good for the city. If not, the Leafs fans will be very overbearing and celebratory. That's fine. Go ahead and have fun, y'all. Y'all deserve it. It's been a long, long, long time. Long, long time. Cool Cat saying, "Nate and Nick Nurse on the mid-range shooting. That explains Pascal and Scotty not shooting much from mid-range, even though both players are great at the mid-range." I know. It's so dumb. Why would you chop off like one of your opportunities of, in some ways, any coach that's like, "I don't want you to use the mid-range because of like stats," or what do the Billy Ball stuff, I can't even remember the word right now. You know the one I mean, the stat stuff. If somebody's telling you not to shoot mid-range, that's dumb. Look at DeMar DeRozan in his game. Like, the mid-range is an important level of shooting from. There's close to the basket, there's mid-range, and there's threes. And if you're avoiding shooting in that whole zone, that's really stupid. And why the fuck would you train your players to be like, you're going to get in trouble if you take a mid-range shot? Because he did act like that. Apparently, he punished the players if they took mid-range shots on the Pacers. So it's like Miles Turner was like, "Fuck him. I don't care. I'm going to take mid-range anyway." Because that's part of what I do. And I've been doing for 10 years now. And who the fuck are you going to come in and tell me not to do mid-range anymore? He did have something nice to say about Nate, though. Miles said this, and listen to this. This is very interesting. Nate Bjorkgren's defensive scheme that he implemented was to be aggressive on the ball and go for steals and chase the ball around and then funnel anybody who came to the lane to Miles Turner in the middle of the lane to block the shot. And he said he liked that because his defensive stats went up, his blocks went up, and he really enjoyed being that centerpiece that would stop the last line of protection when they were chasing everything. He liked that role. So he did compliment him for his defensive stuff. And he did say that this dude's an amazing genius with basketball plays, X's and O's, and things like that. There is a lot of value in Nate. He has a lot of strengths. It's just that there's some really bad weaknesses. And that's really interesting to me. Guardian saying, I can only see Masai Ujiri going outside for a coach and cannot promote from the issues within. Most likely some coaches will be let go. Well, it's interesting that Adrian's the only name from our coaching staff that's getting mentioned. I really do think Earl was in the middle of it. And in some ways, he's tainted by the bullshit. In fact, he may have been a big part of the conflict. As you know, it takes two sides. And it could be at some point, it very much did become like a Watson versus Bjorkgren kind of underlying feud on our team in certain ways that we didn't even realize. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think getting somebody from the outside, Griffin may be safe in some ways because he's maybe above it and wasn't a part of it all in some ways. I could see that because he's that kind of guy, and he's been in all kinds of different situations where it's been tumultuous and crazy over his whole entire playing and coaching career. So I could see Adrian being like absolved and kind of apart from it, and Masai understanding that, and that's part of the reason why he'll interview him. But I'll bet you everybody else on the staff that had something to do with any kind of toxic this year, they're out. And that includes Earl Watson, I think. So let's see. Monique is saying, gee, this story is very true. Oren wouldn't write this up if it wasn't. Well, it's substantiated by the stuff that happened in Indiana. And if we put two and two together, we Windhurst this shit and we really try and think about that's what we've been trying to do since the season ended. Why the fuck did we have such a bad year? We're trying to solve this mystery. And if anything, today we got a couple more of the pieces. And this does seem like this is a big, huge center part of it is the issues with Nate Bjorkgren. So let's see. MSJ saying, what is this Nate story? Late to the show here. Well, basically, Nate Bjorkgren is a really good tactical coach as far as X's and O's, game plans, being meticulously organized, being so organized, but he's also super demanding. And apparently, he's not a very good people person. He will demean people that are below him in the organization as far as insulting, yelling, getting on them this unfairly. And it could be in the losing this season, he felt upset and mad, and he let go like with some of the bullshit he did in Indiana, and it turned people off on the Raptors team. And because he's so close to Nick, in some ways he has immunity, and maybe he got bad behavior passed by Nick, and Nick was like, well, he just cares. He just really wants us to win. Why are you not on the same page with him? Why wouldn't you feel the way that Nate feels? It could be like that he backed up his friend against the other people, and everybody probably saw it's like, Nick, you're a fucking asshole. Why are you backing up this asshole? It could be a lot of that kind of stuff. Let's see. Fiercely saying, I see Earl telling Nate, you is not him. Yeah, it could be exactly like that. That like Nate, maybe he even forgot. It was like, maybe he felt like he was above Earl at a moment, and Earl had to check him. It's like, no, yo. I was your coach in Phoenix. Remember that. You worked for me in Phoenix, and you got to remember, it could be that because there's not a real clear delineation of who the number one is underneath Nick Nurse. I mean, it's Adrian, but in some ways, who is it after that? Is it Earl or Nate? And because Nate wasn't actually an assistant coach, he was a consultant. Well, how does that all figure into everything too? But I see this fiercely. I could see Earl saying straight up, like saying something bullshit. It could be that Earl got sent home because he fucking cussed out Nate at one point. Could very well be that Earl was not a professional because he had enough. And that may be why he wasn't asked to come on that trip. We don't know the reason why Earl was not asked to come on that trip. We know it was Earl for sure because we saw his absence, and we've heard the story now since that assistant coach was not asked to come on the trip. And we know it was Earl for sure. And it could be that Earl fucking cussed out Nate at that time, and Nick was like, don't come on this trip with us, please, or something like that. We can speculate all this shit because we're not journalists. We're fans. And we can look at this from an educated point of view and think about this and really kind of, we don't know what's for sure, but we can start to kind of try and fill in the picture and kind of understand it. Seriously saying, jokes aside, now that Nick Nurse is gone, Nate should also leave. We will find out more about Earl once they announce the new head coach and why he's not a candidate. Yeah, I really think if he's not, we understand why. We understand why. No, Nate is definitely gone. Like, honestly, I'll bet you for sure he's gone. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. If Nick's gone, he's gone for sure. Because, like, the only reason why he was here is because of Nick. In fact, it may be that Masai was kind of weary of bringing Nate back because of the things that happened in Indiana and some of the stuff that maybe when he was on Toronto before in our championship year around that. Maybe he saw a little bit of that. But like Nick was like, well, I love having Nate around. He makes my job easier and I want him here. If you guys aren't going to hire him, I'll hire him personally with my own money and he'll be a special consultant under our team. That could have been the arrangement the whole fucking time, that he wasn't even really hired by Masai and Bobby. Nick hired him and was paying him himself. Sometimes that's what it means when it says special consultant and not a full actual assistant coach. That's sometimes what that means, is that the franchise doesn't want to pay for the guy or have the guy around, but the coach really wants him. So they have a consultant on the team. Let's see. Cool Cat saying a lot of the young players really like Earl Watson, and especially from Rico runs. That could explain the body language too. Yeah, especially all right. If it's gonna be a Nate versus Earl thing, who the fuck do you think they're gonna follow? Who do you think they're gonna support? It's Earl Watson for sure. They have much more respect for Earl Watson than Nate Bjorkgren for sure. And the connection to Rico Hines for sure. So in some ways, that may have been part of it. It could be that Nick sided with Nate and the players sided with the other coaches. And that could have been part of the disconnect and part of the reason why they were listening to Nick because they had to, because it's part of being a pro, but their heart wasn't into it because they didn't believe in him anymore because he was more on Nate's side with certain things instead of the side of the other side of whoever was against Nate. So it could be just as simple as that. That's part of the reason why they started tuning out Nick, because they didn't respect him anymore because of the decisions he was making with the staff. So, it's crazy, crazy, crazy. G saying MSJ, long story short, he is authoritative with no bedside manner. An assistant coach quit under him in Indiana. Turner said he forbade them from taking mid-range shots and players requested trades because of him. That's right. TJ Warren did not want to play for him. He openly said it. Nate Bjorkgren's the new coach of Indiana. See ya. I'm going to Brooklyn. Boom. And he was out. And he said he'd come back to Indiana after he got fired. After they fired him, TJ was like, I'll come back to Indiana now. What does that tell you? TJ Warren did not want to play for him. Cowboy saying, I find it weird that Nick Nurse hasn't said anything on being fired, or did I miss it? Also, I'm so tired of teams trading for OG. OG is the man, and I don't think the Raptors would ever trade him. Well, he's a really attractive trade piece, and everybody does want him. And that's why his name's always brought up. But that's strength. Just as much as Becky Hammond's name keeps coming up for coaching searches, well, that means that this is a very sought after person. And in some ways, we want to hold on to OG because his value just continues to go up the more and more people thirst for him. I'm with you, Cowboy. I don't want to trade OG either. But if the deal is right and we're getting somebody like Kawhi coming back the other way, well, what would you do? Another DeMar DeRozan trade? Yeah, I would, even if OG was involved. If I knew the player was coming back, was that much better and a superstar needle pusher to the direction of getting a championship? Yeah. In some ways, that may be part of what happens with OG, is that he will be that pit person like DeMar that brings us the second championship because he gets traded for somebody who's absolutely a needle pusher in the right direction. Yeah. Nick's not going to comment on anything. In fact, I think that, listen, we may be very misunderstanding about what's going on with Nick right now. First of all, we know that he's taken time to think about things. Well, obviously, he doesn't have to think about the job anymore. He's just got to think about the 10 years now and the time with the Raptors, the whole ride, the amazingness of it, the things that he did historically, the achievements, the failures, everything about it is all going to go through his head. In some ways, I think he's so burnt out. I don't even know if he's going to take another coaching job for next year. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not coaching a team next year and he just takes a year off. In some ways, you go this grind of the NBA season year after year, even if you get summers off, it's still a grind. And if you've been doing it for like decades, you may want to just take 1 year off. And that may be what he does. Now, if he takes a job and he goes somewhere else, that'll be fine. He's ready. But right now, he's in mourning. This very much is like this. And he doesn't want to be in public. He doesn't want to talk about this publicly. It's probably very, very super emotional, very painful, and not very fun. In fact, the hard stuff for him right now is very much the breakup between Raptors and him. I feel very, very bad for him. I don't like this situation at all. I don't want him to have pain. I don't want him to have sadness. I did not want this to happen, but it had to. And in some ways, if I could send him good positive vibes of love, saying, Coach, we still love you, even though you're not our coach anymore, I would. But he doesn't want to be in front of a camera right now. He probably has a lot of feelings right now: confusion, sadness, depression, anger, a lot of different things he's going through. You know how it is when you break up with somebody. It's not easy. And he's going through that right now. So we should respect him in his space. And yeah, if you don't hear from him from the whole summer, don't be surprised. You'll start hearing from him around Team Canada time, but you may not hear from him until then. And if he gets hired somewhere soon, I don't know. The jobs are kind of different and weird. He's not going to get hired in Detroit. We know that. And that is really the only open job right now, other than us, is Detroit and us. So in some ways, the things aren't lining up for him to go somewhere directly from us. So let's see. Jimmy's saying, I really wonder who we are going to end up getting and how our team is going to look. Could go either way, but I hope it's nothing but positive. We got to trust Masai. I said this recently. It's like he's such a good person at player talent and getting players in the draft and really sussing out good character and stuff. Well, he's really good with personnel too. That's something that we don't talk about with Masai Ujiri enough. That he's not just a player scout; he's a scout of talent all around in an NBA franchise. Whether it's as scouts, he's an ultimate scout himself. So obviously, he's going to go find some of the greatest scouts around the NBA and have them working under him for the Toronto Raptors. Whether it's coaches, I'm sure he is really on the pulse of the coaches around the world in the NBA and other places like the WNBA, Euro leagues, all kinds of places. And in fact, his track record, he's only made one decision coaching, and that was Nick Nurse. And we could say, because of what Nick Nurse did in the 5 years as the head coach of the Toronto Raptors, he was an overwhelming success. So in some ways, Masai is perfect with his coaching decisions. So maybe he gets another chance to knock it out of the park. And that's what I'm saying. If he was smart enough to replace Casey with Nurse at that time, and we saw what happened, and he made Nurse into a big name as a coach, like Nurse was nobody when he took the head coaching job of Toronto. And now he's very much somebody. That's what I'm saying. Even if Masai hires somebody and we're kind of like, Charles Lee, well, that's not flashy. What the fuck is that, Masai? This isn't like M.A. Udoka or Becky Hammond. We should check ourselves. Because the last time this happened, it was Nick Nurse. And we're like, Nick Nurse? Who the fuck is this? Why did you hire Nick Nurse? Well, we found out. So that's what I'm saying. In some ways, we got to trust him Masai to make the right decision. And then when he makes the decision, let's trust that the decision's a good decision at the time, because we may very well see something that he sees way before, and he's really smart, and that's why he put them there. So I'm excited about this, and it could be somebody very much out of left field, and we're like, holy shit, why did he hire this person? Well, when that happens, let all the casuals and all the people from the outside kind of flip out and freak out. But hopefully it'll be another kind of effect, just like Nick Nurse when we hired him. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I like the change because in some ways it's exciting. And it is the kind of thing that can really get Raptors Nation reinvigorated with enthusiasm and excitement for next season, who we hire as a head coach. If it is Becky Hammond, oh my gosh, think about how people are going to feel. I really wish we could make allowances for her to coach both teams. Like if she could be the coach of the Las Vegas Aces and the coach of the Toronto Raptors, this would be historic, crazy kind of shit. But it may be too much to put on her plate. Maybe there's some sort of weird situation where they have associate head coaches on both teams that take care of kind of shadowing the parts where she can't be in two places. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe there's more of she's more catering to the Aces, obviously from now right up until their season runs up until the end of the postseason. And maybe in the preseason stuff that we got to do, she's around and she's keeping tabs on it. It's actually really convenient. She plays in Las Vegas. We're going to do the summer games there, summer league. She could fucking be right there and still coaching the WNBA and still be involved in things. I don't know. Can we make this happen? Could this be a way that this works out for everybody as far as she can coach the WNBA in the summer and then she's coaching the Raptors in the other time? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I was brainstorming. This will only work if there's a really strong associate head coach underneath her in both places that can step in and be her in her absence at any given moment. And that if she really prioritizes it like a yin yang, where it really is like now is the time for WNBA, of course, because their season's starting, and taking like really focusing hard on them, giving her best to them completely. And in some ways on the periphery, keeping track of what we're doing. I mean, in some ways, it would cheat both franchises, I guess, not to have the head coach to have the full attention just on the one team. But I'm trying to make this work for everybody in some ways. And in some ways, that would be really illustrious. Now, would the workload be too crazy for her? A year round crazy like this? Maybe she'd love it. Maybe she'd love it. Maybe she'd eat it up. Maybe she wouldn't because she has a young family and she want that family time and that time off also. I don't know. But this is the kind of out of the box thinking I'm doing. Is like, can she coach both teams? That would be really cool in some ways. In some ways, it would be kind of really fucking weird and cool and at the same time. Let's see. Cool Cat saying Finch was a great offensive coach. I didn't want to believe the Nate stuff at Indiana, but hearing this again, Nate is also coaching Canada's team in his absence. Scary stuff. Nate Power Trip. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is what it is. I mean, this happens. People's ego can get out of check, and if they're not checked right, they get out of control. And this is kind of this kind of thing. And especially if he's backed up by somebody like Nick, them winning the championship in some ways maybe drove up his ability to be kind of arrogant. He's like, well, what do you know? I won a championship with Toronto as an assistant and stuff like that. That kind of stuff can make somebody a little more emboldened to be even more of a dick. So who knows? MSJ saying, just read the article at G. This Nate B guy was needed for Nurse to function, but is himself a nightmare. Strange stuff. But I could tell the team just wasn't responding to the obvious. Players lived it. Yeah, they're in the middle of it and commending them as professionals. As listen, there's a lot of finger pointing going on, but it was with the coaches. And in some ways, the players not finger pointing and not destroying. I love these guys more and more. It's like these dudes weren't at each other. Scotty and Freddie had no beef. There's no problem with these guys. It was the coaches, and they were in the middle of it. It very much is like kids sitting at home and mom and dad are fighting in the other room. It very much is that kind of shit. It's exactly that kind of vibe. I'm sure Chris and OG and Scotty and them were in the locker room thinking like, oh, this shit again. Oh my gosh, really? It's not enough that we're losing and now the fucking coaches are fighting again. Oh my gosh, it could have been just like that this season. It's crazy. Let's see. Fiercely saying, I believe the Rico Hines runs will be telling. We'll see which Raptors go back this summer. I don't think any of this will be effective, Fiercely. Seriously, I think Rico, in some ways, like, all right, go look at his Instagram right now. And on his Instagram, it still says he's a Toronto Raptors assistant coach. In fact, he may have a special deal outside of all this. He may not even be latched up with Earl anymore. He may really have liked being with the Raptors this season, even with all the craziness. And it may be that he has a separate thing with Masai. It's like, look, Earl, I really see the value of having you around this 1 year we've had you so far. And, even with all the dysfunction and the sadness and the weird things going on, we'd like to retain you because he's still got it all on his social medias that he's a Raptors assistant coach and development coach. And I don't think that any of this will have anything to do with anything as far as with Rico Hines. The bond between Pascal and Rico may be part of what keeps him around too. It could be that Pascal's very much like, Rico needs to stay. Now he's already here. He's my guy. You can't get rid of him, Masai. And Masai's like, you know what? You're right. We really like Rico, and he did a really good job this year. And regardless of what happens with the other guys, we'll try and keep him on staff, just like Jamal McGlure. That these certain guys, they don't have to go the way with the rest of them. And I'll bet you money. Obviously, Pascal's going to work with Rico no matter what this summer. I bet you money the Raptors will show up just like they did last year and run at Rico Hines. No different than anything, just because of the shit that happened this year. They'll still be there. G. San Mo, sorry, meant maybe the Watson undercutting Nick was the BS speculation. Now hearing this, the cause of the toxicity makes more sense. Yeah. Well, that's all I'm trying to do here is like, look, you guys are passionate Raptors fans just like me. We saw what happened this season. We want answers. And in some ways, the reporters will give us some of the clues, but they won't fill in the whole picture. And in some ways, if you can really extrapolate from the little kernels of news and truth about this whole situation, you can kind of see where something got turned into, started brewing and just turned into what had happened. So, and we want answers, and that's what we're doing here at the Raptor Street channel. Thank you, Oren Weisfeld, for a very, very good piece of journalism based in fact, not a lot of speculation. In fact, I'm doing all the speculation on top of his article. He's very matter of fact and just telling the things. You can extrapolate from it in your own mind from reading what he wrote, what you think happened. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. So, I really appreciate your journalistic integrity, Oren, and the fact that you put this article out on Friday. It really helped paint more of the picture together. And it makes total sense that Nate would be the epicenter of all the problems on this team. Seriously, it makes total sense. Dan Rosewell's here. Laugh out loud. Blame it on the coaching staff. You guys are hilarious. All right, you call this you guys. That separates from us. So that means you're not a Raptors fan. And I'm just going to hide you and put you out of here because it's a clubhouse. And if you're with us, you can stay. If you're on the other team and you're respectful and you want to talk about basketball, then we'll do that. But when you say something like this and you start like that, you just go bye-bye. That's all. So hasta la vista, Dan Rosewell. And I hope you rose well this morning on this Sunday morning. And you go do Dan things on your Sunday. How about that? Space Cadet saying the whole season, everyone was complaining about locker room vibes and issues, thinking it was players like Fred and Scotty. Yet the entire time was the coaching staff. Exactly, Space Cadet. Exactly. These dudes were telling us, no, we're together. No, everybody on this team gets along. Everybody's asking about it all season. They're like, no, I like Scotty. Scotty and I are great. Fred's great. Oh, Pascal, we're all good. So there you go. This is part of what we were trying to fact find mission. Try and figure out what the fuck happened with our season. Nameless is saying, I said that a long time ago to you, Lex. Maybe there's mixed messages coming from the coaching staff. You quashed it fairly quickly. Well, I don't know what I said exactly in that time, Nameless. And when was this? If I quash stuff, that's because I'm in the heat of the battle. And my job and my position in the Raptors organization is as a fan on YouTube to quash propaganda that's bad for the team. So please forgive me if I'm like taking out the toxic reports until they're substantiated and quashing them, because that's part of what I do here is that, if it's just rumor and innuendo, I won't say that's not true. Even if it is true and we find out it later, it doesn't help us at that time. If I put it on blast and say it's true, does it? No, because it's still a problem in there and my noise won't help things. So I'll help in the other way and say, no, there isn't a problem, even if I'm wrong and the house is burning down. Does that make sense, Nameless? So it's like now I'm talking about it because the season's over and it's not going to damage the team. It's more likely to help us in understanding what happened. And it's really timing and when it happened and it not being totally substantiated. I won't believe it, especially if it's negative about the team. Like I didn't want to believe what David Thorpe said, but it came true and he was right. And, that's the other fishy thing. Like this is alluded to in Oren Weisfeld's article that an outsider of the team was pushing with their own agenda to get Earl Watson to be the next coach. In fact, that's really fishy. That David Thorpe specifically was saying, I would fire Nick Nurse and get rid of Fred VanVleet, and I would hire Earl Watson to be the next head coach of the Raptors immediately. Like he had a very specific thing that he wanted Masai to do. Now, he may have been right on the toxic about Nick, but maybe he wasn't right. Like that showed too much that he was saying Earl. And who knows, he may have been friends with Earl and he's like trying to do this because Earl's like looking out for him also. And that may be why Earl's not in consideration for the coach's job, is because of David Thorpe, him mentioning him also. And then Masai's thinking about it as, oh, well, that's really toxic. I wonder if Earl put David up to saying this shit about the team in the middle of it. And it was not helpful. It was really bad. And in some ways, it was kind of like a toxic move against Nick Nurse on the down low as an assistant coach. Because in some ways, you could make that connection that maybe Earl was kind of spreading shit out there to kind of undermine Nick in some ways. Who knows? Who knows? It could be. The fact that he was mentioned specifically is really telling. Really, really telling. All right, let's see. I'm going to give Dan one more comment. I just wanted to say what he's saying. Raptors are going to be mid. Even if Greg Pop coaches them, the Nick Nurse hate won't change. The lack of shooting, shot creation, and clutch scoring. We'll see what excuses you'll come up with next year. Okay, Dan, you won't. But yeah, it won't be excuses next year. It'll be what it is. And yeah, you won't see what we're saying because you can get the fuck out, motherfucker. Yeah, you are gone. G saying, Dan, Boucher said the players got closer. If you listen, it's pretty clear the coaching staff was an issue. We honor and appreciate Nurse still. That's right. Fuck Dan. Dan's a fan of another team. He can go suck a dick. You can go like walk off of short pier or something like that. I don't care what you do, Dan. You won't be here because you're not allowed here anymore. Space Cadet saying Dan just regurgitating the Twitter narratives. He's a hateful fan from another team nation. He may be a Cavs fan. He may be very much wounded and hurt because of a first round exit to the Knicks by the Cavs. So it could be as simple as that. He could be some other stupid fan or something. Who knows? Who cares? MSJ saying at Dan, sounds like the entire team was a mess, players included, but if the coaching staff was infighting, it would be easy to the players. Yet Chris B said all of it brought the players closer. Yeah. In some ways, that's what happens. Think about in a family when your parents are fighting, the siblings kind of bond together and hold each other and get more closer as far as like, well, at least we have each other. That's really good. In some ways, I think that this could be really good team building in a weird, roundabout, toxic way. Our team may be more ensconced together and more on the same page with each other, even if it didn't look like that on the court. And if we have a better coach with a better system and they come back with a new approach, that may be that we see all kinds of connectivity with our team that we should have saw last year that is very easy because these guys honestly want to work together. They really like the team as they are with who they are together. They really believe in it. They're going to make it work right. They really do. And they are closer. That's what Chris said. They're closer because of the adversity. Cowboys saying, Dan, what you talking about mid? Laugh out loud. The Raptors will win it all next year, and we'll see what you got to say about that. You get them, Cowboy. That's right. Yeah, who the fuck? What, Dan, you took a wrong turn in the wrong neighborhood. It's like you just came in the wrong neighborhood, and there's like a whole gang with a bunch of chains coming out to whoop you in the fucking face with a chain, motherfucker. Cool Cat saying this probably is tied into the bench playing time. The bench played so good against the Bucks bench, and I was like, these guys could have had 5 minutes a game consistently. Bench played Detroit well too. Well, all right, let's think about this. If there's gatekeeping behavior by Nate Bjorkgren, there's definitely gatekeeping behavior by Nick Nurse with his rotations. It's either you're in or you're out. And that's a big problem. That kind of mentality of gatekeeping and not having free flowing communication or free flowing ideas about how you can play everybody is really toxic. And one of the things I heard Becky Hammond say in an interview yesterday that I watched, I really loved, is like she's been the whole thing of every single person on the bench, just like Fred. She's been the very last person on the bench, the 12th man, and she understands what it feels like to be that person at the very end of the bench. She also knows how it feels to be the number one and to be the person in charge and the person taking all the big shots and trying to win the game for the team. So she has experience in each of the roles all the way from 1 to 12. And that is something that really helps her connect with every single person on her roster. Like if she came to coach the Raptors, she would very much be easily able to connect with Ron Harper Jr., Jeff Doughton Jr., Malachi, and all these guys. And in some ways, just from hearing her in interviews, I know she would give them chances and she'd allow for our bench to develop because in some ways she discerned that she understands that the person at the end of the bench needs a different kind of development than the number one or different people, but she doesn't ignore all of them. That she very much said that she can get stuff out of the people at the end of the bench because she understands their value from being in their position from before. So I loved hearing that stuff. That was like, okay, she's very different than Nick as far as the way she looks at the usage of the deeper bench. And it's partly because she has the experience of being the deeper bench herself. So I love that part about Becky Hammond, that she didn't just come in as a heralded number one pick in the WNBA draft. She walked on as an undrafted player and she fought and clawed to make herself on that team, just like Fred VanVleet did. In fact, the parallels between her and Fred VanVleet are incredible, insane. Part of the reason why Becky Hammond is so good is when she was a little girl, she played 2-on-2 basketball against her father, her older brother, and her older brother's friend. And she was always the littlest, the smallest person out there, and she's playing against full-grown men. And she had to learn how to do crazy spin shots off the backboard and ways to shoot over much taller people than her. And that's why she had such great finishing skills with spin off the backboard and doing some of the stuff she did. This is very Fred like. We know that Fred had to do this kind of shit also. And that's what I'm saying. She's very much like a female Fred, or Fred is like a male Becky Hammond, because they share the same path and story from their professional careers. Undrafted players that made their teams and then rose to the absolute top of their teams also. So I think that this synergy, if we were, once again, if we're lucky enough to get Becky Hammond to coach the Toronto Raptors, the synergy and the comparisons and the same kind of mindset of Fred and Becky will be very much the same. Trust me. They are like birds of a feather. In fact, as much as she likes DeMar DeRozan, she may really, really like Fred VanVleet if she gets the chance to coach him. So it's very, very interesting stuff. Let's see. Omari's saying, sad to say, but the best candidate for the job is Nick Nurse. Maybe we could get him. Hey, can you, we're going to fire you for a month. All right, Nick, but we're going to rehire you when we can't hire anybody else, but you can't bring the little ball guy back with you. No, Nate Bjorngren. Just don't bring Nate back and you can come back. I don't know, Omari. I think it's already done. And we don't want to jerk him around. Like, this is a bad thing. You break up with somebody and then you make up with them like a month later. No, it's never exactly right. Things are damaged and fractured at this point. And getting Nick Nurse back is not a good idea. In fact, maybe getting Nate back wasn't a good idea when we did. And that is part of the reason why the things got to this point in the 2 years since he's been back, since he was in Indiana. So, yeah. Space Cadet saying that game against the Bucks was playing their third stringers. Our bench did not perform to their capabilities when the games were important. I don't know if that's true. I mean, we played really well. Our bench looked good in that last game against Milwaukee at the end of the year. Listen, I know we can say the bench didn't look good, but the bench can look good if it's used properly. And I'll make this argument every day. It's like a chicken or the egg argument. Which is it? Is the bench too bad, or is it Nick didn't play the bench? I don't know. I think that different coach could get more out of the bench and the bench would look better. So in some ways, I still do blame Nick for our bad bench, even though some people say, well, it's not Nick's fault if they don't build a good team and have a good bench there. Well, yeah, it is in some ways, because every single fucking NBA player has some good skills that are usable in the game. I don't care where they are, whether they're so young or what. You can find ways to do it. Nick was not creative in doing that. And that is a big reason why we didn't have a bench. It's not that we didn't have the personnel. He just didn't use it, and he didn't use it correctly when he did use it. So MSJ saying at Nameless, you are very good at the gut takes. A feel for what the real deal might be, no matter the flack. You might have to take. Props to it, Nameless. But Nick Nurse leaving, perhaps needed, is still a mess. Yeah. Yeah, no, Nameless. Listen, I love that you guys are opinionated and you come in here and, I may not agree with you guys all the time, but remember that part of what I do is very much because of my mantras and how I feel about the Raptors and protecting them. Like, even if there's negative stuff going on during the season, I will be like, no, I don't hear it. I don't hear it. And in some ways, that's part of my way of not adding to the noise. Now it's off season. You can get away with saying whatever the fuck you want. You want to say you want to look back at 10 years and take some time to reflect and see where you are with the relationship with the front office. You can say it now, Nick, because there's no games to be played. And in some ways, I can be a little bit more different on this channel in certain ways because there's no games to be played also. So it's a similar kind of thing. Let's see. Daddy's saying, sorry, Lex, but that ESPN clip about her calling the Raptors them boys rubbed me the wrong ways on so many different ways. Was on board having her as a head coach before that clip. Now I'm not so sure. Don't let that affect you. Seriously, Daddy. That doesn't mean anything, them boys. In fact, it endeared me to her. It made me like her more because she's taking her priorities and her responsibilities that she currently has over the ones that she doesn't have yet. And this is true. Everything in the tell in that was not, there were a couple of tells. She's a little annoyed because she does want to focus on the Aces and she knows that the Toronto Raptors is a distraction and she doesn't want that to affect the things that are happening with her and her team there. And that's part of it, how you can read her. Now, she's not trying to be flippant when she says the boys. We say stuff like the girls all the time towards them. It's not in a derogatory thing. It's like, we can't get mad if we're going to say girls and, they get upset. We got to just take it as boys and girls. That's just what it is. And if she wants to say it that way, I have no problem with that. In some ways, you have to listen to more of her interviews and the way she talks about coaching men. It's very, very, very illuminating. And you understand why she could be a very capable head coach in the NBA. It doesn't matter if it's the WNBA or the NBA. She coaches anybody. And it's not a disrespect. It's not a slight. I know that maybe some people were rubbed the wrong way by the way she said that. But don't take it that way. Seriously, if you go watch more clips of her and the way she talks about stuff, you'll be more impressed with her again. In some ways, it's really her telling the press to fuck off with bringing that noise here because we're celebrating the Las Vegas Aces, and I have no problem with her being like that. That's exactly how she should be. If it was flipped and it was the other way, and she was a Raptors coach and they were trying to interview her for the Aces, I'd want her to say the same damn thing. Says that, well, this isn't the time for the ladies right now. This is the time for the boys. And I'll talk about the boys right now. That really is like I said, much more maturity than Nick Nurse and his timing of how he talked about things. She knows the place and the time to talk about things. And I appreciate that and respect that about her. So, but yeah, watch more clips about her and see if you fall more in love with her again. Go watch some of her player clips from when she played in the WNBA. Watch some of her stuff from Colorado State. She looks so fresh faced and so young, and she doesn't even look like she's a player. She just looks like a model or like a young girl that would be going doing other stuff. She doesn't look like she fits. In fact, there's funny stories about her trying to make the Liberty. Some of the players that were on the team already were hitting her on purpose and beating her up to try and see if she was tough enough to make it. And she just shut up and took it. And they were like, whoa, little white girl, she's really tough. I like her. It's like I'm beating the shit out of her on purpose to see if she quits the team. And she's not quitting. So there's certain things about her that are really, really impressive and stuff like that. So don't take one little word like boys and hold it against her. She doesn't mean anything by it. Trust me. She's very much respecting our team and what us interviewing her. Don't think of that as a disrespect. It really isn't. Space Cadet saying, Dan, coaching and team atmosphere matters. There were several teams less talented than the Raptors that made the playoffs simply because of cohesiveness. Exactly. We don't know how much this detracted from us. We ended 41-41, exactly 50%. We could have been a 10 more win team, 51 team easily if we'd had more better, less toxic and less distractions and just a couple of better breaks in different ways. Yeah, I don't care what Dan's saying anymore. Dan's gone. Dan, Dan, we only knew you for a second, you turd. All right, let's see. Dan, Nurse just got fired, and reports from actual players about Nate forbidding them to take mid ranges and an assistant coach quitting is actual facts. This is not hate. Yeah, Dan, you are hate. You are Raptors hate, and that's why you don't belong on the Raptors channel, Raptors Freak channel, and you are gone, baby. Yeah. NVD, good to see a new name. 9:30 a.m. every morning. We're talking Raptors, and if you don't come correct, you get shown the door. Let's see. My question is, why did Siakam hit at some point? He got fined. You saying I heard something about somebody saying that Siakam got fined or something, or listen, there's a little bit of like an old story that's recycling into this year that isn't really pertaining to this year, and it has to do with when Nick and Pascal got into it during the bubble. That there was a legitimate beef and they got really heated, and it was really because they both wanted to win and they were upset and they kind of got versus each other at one point in the locker room. That was a very real story that happened. But they fleshed that all out and they fixed their shit and they're fine. But that was more of a heat of the passion kind of argument. I don't think Pascal got in any trouble this year. So I can't see it. I don't know what you're talking about specifically. If you know specific time and specific any of that kind of stuff, let me know. Because I didn't hear about Pascal getting fined or getting in trouble this season. I know he got in trouble for the bubble thing with Nick at that time. But that was 2 or 3 years ago. So Nameless is dapping MSJ for for recognizing him, for knowing some stuff and being on top of things. We do appreciate that, Nameless. And like I said, y'all can say that stuff. I may not double down with you, but you know my reasons why. You know my reasons why. We can speculate and think about it. But if I don't go with you, it may be because I'm protecting the team. Space is saying last year's team almost won 50 games, and this year's team was supposed to be better. They underperformed. That's not only roster construction necessarily; it extends beyond the players. Yeah, a lot of our problems had to do directly with the coaching, toxic stuff bleeding over into our players and stuff on the, if you have like a whole bunch of cooks in the kitchen and they're telling different things and there's a power struggle between a couple of those cooks, it can be really hard to run the kitchen right. Because there's miscommunication. Maybe there's somebody going back and changing things against somebody, what somebody did. It could be that Earl did something and he like set something up. And then Nate was like, this is bullshit. And he scraps it and gets rid of it. And then Earl comes back and say, wait, I just set this thing up to do with these guys. He's like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. It could be that dumb of like that kind of power struggles and stupid shit like that. So it could be very, very interesting like that. Let's see. All right, hang on. Let me make sure I got. We're gonna make sure we read every single comment for sure, and I won't get too far ahead. All right, here we go. Okay, I'm at Space Cadet. Okay, yeah, I'm at MSJ. Pensair is in his own head. The stream and Nick Nurse takes are based on media content posted links and Boucher's vlogcast and that Nick Nurse press conference. Pensair is not a positive spirit. Yeah, I agree with all this. Well, if Dan's a Pensairite, we know where he's from. Honestly, he already said that, like, he already delineated that he looks at us as Raptors fans, but not himself. So he gives himself away already. Like if you're a Pensairite and you're not considering yourself a Raptors fan, well then what the fuck are you doing here, Dan? You could do all kinds of things with your Sunday morning. You don't need to be here. You could go do other things, but you feel like you got to be here. I don't understand that. G's saying the roster does need tweaking too, but at the same time, we don't know how they will look with a different system. I am Nurse fan. Wanted him long term, but decisions have consequences. Yeah, I was a huge Nurse fan. I was saying all season I want him to be our Popovich. Well, it didn't happen. And part of it is maybe the toxic of his assistant. Maybe part of it is Clutch's influence to try and get him a bigger payday somewhere else. Maybe it's a very calculated, stupid ass press conference that absolutely put the nail in the coffin and made it so we had to fire him no matter what. So a lot of things happened where we couldn't go back and we just needed to make this change. If we tried to just be like, nothing's wrong, and we continued with him, that could be even worse. We could make it even more damaging in the long term. Daddy's saying to Dan, Leaf fan or xenophobic fan of another NBA team, trying to have objective conversations with these types of trolling individuals like some of you are attempting to do is pointless. There you go, Daddy. I'm with you on that for sure. That's why I ignore him. I'm not even reading his comments at this point. He's deleted. Amit saying, yo, still waiting for the announcement of Becky Hammond. Something about Nate. When I was 10, I played against Nate's son and he came to the game. That was so fun. That's cool. I'm sure he's a nice guy in some ways, but he just has some blind spots with person skills. And that is a big problem. In some ways, you can't have somebody demeaning people that are beneath him on your staff. That's toxic as fuck. You treat everybody with respect. What is that comment they say? You treat the CEO and the janitor with the same respect. Nate Bjorngren's not following that shit. He may be the kind of person that goes to a restaurant and yells at the waitress. Seriously. Isaac saying not having mid-range means you aren't developing a game that also maximizes the free throw line. Yeah. The fact that came out in that Indiana stuff about him being so hard edged against the mid-range and punishing his players for taking it, that's like really, really controlling. And that's a detrimental thing to the team. So think about that. If he's a force within our team this past year, telling the players what they can and cannot do, maybe that's part of the reason why the team looks so weird on the court, for sure. G's saying, you must be new here. Not saying that as an insult, but of course, we talk about players and shooting and free throws. Today, we're talking about the report and what's coming out. That's right. We cover everything. We talked about that game with Chicago and the missed free throws and DR DeRozan. We very much covered that after it happened. And this is a Sunday special report, expose by Oren Weisfeld on the toxicity with our coaching staff and the things that happened. Yeah. Let's see. Cowboy wants to know your team, Dan. What's your team, Dan? Nameless saying, you guys all got your wrenches. Well, I just got my first strike. Let's fucking go. Nameless, yeah, I didn't give you a strike. I thought about it, but you finished up the comment with the right thing at the end of it. So it's all good. Cool Cat saying that might explain why Pascal praised a lot of the assistant coaches for helping him at the end of the season interview. He was giving them support, knowing the internal issues that transpired. Well, we know who Pascal's guys are. His guys are definitely Earl and Rico. And in some ways, this will be very interesting to see how things go this summer. When Masai says fit, it could be that he's thinking about the coaches to keep around because of the players that he keeps around. If he's going to keep Pascal, he's going to probably keep Rico. And I don't know if he'll keep Earl, though. I really do think that Earl's tainted with toxic because of this whole thing, that he may have been part of the three problems: Nick, Nate, and Earl. It was like a synergy between the three of them that were really at the hub and the part of the huge problems with our team this year. So it could be that Earl's compromised, but Rico is not. And that they'll keep him around because of his connection with Pascal and how much they really do work together and how much fruitfulness came from that on a day-to-day basis, having Rico around with Pascal this whole year. So I could see that. Daddy's saying that, Dan, the mere fact that you even reference that adolescent prattle talking charlatan in any way speaks volumes on your overall basketball acumen and so their lack of. There you go. Daddy Gates dropping big words. Prattle and acumen. I love this. We are an intelligent channel. We are an intelligent channel. I say crazy words all the time, and you guys mirror me. You guys are a very intelligent group, and I am so proud of the Raptor Free Call in so many different ways. You guys are my birds of a feather, and I appreciate y'all so much. I really, really do. Yeah, we don't even talk about he who shall not be named. In some ways, he's not relevant anymore. That a lot of his platform of contention about confusion and people being versus has all been debunked and declawed and stupid at this point. There's no validity to his whole Scotty versus Freddie shit that he's been pushing this whole entire year. It's all been debunked. And in some ways, Pensera is just an idiot saying his own stupid shit over there on his channel. There you go. MSJ saying, you aren't wrong. I don't even know what he said, but I don't care. The team was just a letdown. Shooting was bad, and I, for one, have said that for months, but it was obvious that Nick Nurse gave up before the play-in. He was not professional. Definitely. Our shooting could very much improve. I'm looking forward to seeing a new coach come in and make us miraculously shoot better all of a sudden because he puts the team in better spots to take better, higher quality shots and just has a better system overall. And then we'll see that Nick Nurse, the guru of shooting, was actually full of shit. And then some ways these flashy things like Noah, his book, and whatever apps, they didn't really help. And well, so all of a sudden somebody comes in with schemes and a play system that helps get us better shots. And then boom, all of a sudden we're shooting better because of that. I think that's what's going to happen. Seriously. I think our system, if we look at what was told about Nate Bjorkgren enforcing his system in Indiana that didn't apply to the players and their skills, well, is there some of that going on this year? If he has a tendency to do that, to bull a system over on the players, no matter what. Well, this is the system. You just got to do it. Well, it doesn't really cater to how I want to do things. That could be part of what the disconnect and the problems were with how effective we were offensively, is that the system wasn't really good for our players, actually, and that they were being very stubborn about them playing that system, Nick and Nate. So let's see. G saying, Pensare makes low light videos, mocks players, asks them to be traded for bags of chips, goes out of his way to attack Fred's family on Twitter, says he's a body language expert, etc. We were talking about facts and what's coming out in reports. That's right. We're way more factual in some ways than Pensare ever will be. He has an agenda. He has certain things. Like some people do research because they want to find out a thing that they want to just prove that they already know. And sometimes they do the research and it doesn't actually prove what they wanted to prove. So they fudge shit. They fucking change shit around to make it kind of show that what they think is what is proven, where it's not actually accurate. There's a lot of that going on Pensare's channel. And here, listen, we know the slant, and I'm very pro Raptors. I'm very positive for them, and I will protect them in those kind of ways and propaganda ways, just like Fred propaganda, Pascal propaganda on Twitter. But I'm also based in reality as far as like the truth and what we're saying here. As far as like G says, I read reports, I read the news. I don't read Twitter stupid shit. I don't read fucking fan bullshit like opinions. I really look at the reporters. I really look at what the players and the coaches are saying in press conferences. I really, really read them really intently in some ways. In some ways, Pensare had an agenda to come after Fred this whole season. He's had it for a couple of years. It's just that he's utilizing Scotty at this point to go against Fred and his stupid content. But he was going after Fred 2 or 3 years ago before Scotty was even on our team. So there's a very concrete agenda from Robert Pensair to sully Fred. And that's something right there I can't get behind. And in fact, a lot of the hate for Fred in our nation is partly because Pensair spawns it. And I hate it because honestly, Fred is a legend. He is a legend. I just talked about his similarities with Becky Hammond. And for that story alone, he is a legend in this league. This dude is in a short conversation with Ben Wallace and Moses Malone as some of the greatest undrafted players to ever play in the NBA. And the not as knowledgeable Raptors fan will disrespect Fred and not understand how huge and amazing his story is. That he really, truly is. And I'm going to keep fucking saying this. He is a Raptors legend. Just as Vince Carter is a legend. Fred VanVleet is a legend for our franchise. And people need to start fucking treating him like that and stop fucking sullying him. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, let's see. Nameless saying, G, I love you so much, buddy. G is awesome. G is like, seriously, like if I had to make an army, a Raptor Freaks army, he would probably be the head of information. He would probably be our head of intelligence. And he would definitely be a high ranking person in our army for sure. Cowboys saying, fuck Pensair. That's simple and true. I love it. Fiercely saying, Nick Nurse will find out soon enough if his agency Clutch works for him and represents him adequately. I've listened to Rich Paul and some of the things he said recently. And listen, what he says is he really wants to do what the client wants to do. Like, he's not like, he's trying to make it sound like I listen to my clients and what do they want to do with their career? And I try and help them get what they want. So in some ways, it may be that Nick, I don't know, maybe he was hearing little things from them in his ear saying, you could make this much more on the Lakers and be on the Lakers next season, Nick, if we get you out of Toronto. And Nick's saying like, but I really did want to stay here in Toronto. It's like, but Nick, man, think about the money you could make, bro. You could be like balling in LA and make 10 million a year instead of 8 million with the Raptors next season. I don't know. Wow, keep thinking about it, Nick. I don't know. You could do it. I really like the Raptors though, and I'm the coach of Team Canada. I'm just saying, you got it so good there. Maybe if you don't have it so good, maybe you can get fired or something. That kind of stuff. Daddy Gates is saying that, gee, he's an adolescent prattle talking charlatan. Daddy's really got the words today. I love it. True real basketball heads don't use the verbiage that he uses. Ooh. I love Arsenalist, aka Zarar of Raptors Republic. I love his administrative abilities on that website, and all the stuff he's done for Raptors Republic over the last decade is phenomenal. Thank you, Zarar. But when you do breakdowns of basketball and you use soccer/football terms, I really realize this dude's wheelhouse is actually in soccer. It's not in basketball. And sometimes I find Sarar is trying to apply soccer stuff to basketball things. I'm like, dude, it doesn't work that way in basketball, bro. And sometimes he's really weird about his breakdowns. I'm glad he doesn't do them anymore, hardly on Raptors Republic website anymore, because it didn't serve them in some ways. But yeah, the verbiage people use can kind of give it away whether they know what they're fucking talking about or not. Space Cadet saying, I think we need to be fair to Dan and not group him with Pensair. No one is that level of bigot. Dumping on Pensair today. All right, Zuri Zay's here. Good to see Zuri Zay. Comes and drops in every once in a while. Really appreciate Zuri. I don't know much about the coaching side of NBA, but I certainly hope there's more to her being more to her than being a her, Well, Zuri, I'm going to say this. Listen, one of the things I've had to say in the last couple of days since the Becky Hammond stuff has really like sprouted up in a major way is she's not getting interviewed because she's a woman. She's not getting interviewed for any other reason other than she's a badass and she's a winner. She's very much a very, very like competitive person. Like I said, she was playing in the driveway with her dad and her brother and her brother's friend, playing 2-on-2 all the time. And they wanted to block her shot. She was beating the boys as a kid. And that's where she learned. She didn't play against women very early on. She learned against men. And when she went to Colorado State, she shocked everyone because she's not tall. She's not a very tall person. She very much is like a female version of Fred VanVleet. Their story very much lines up exactly like it. So if you take what you know about Fred and him not getting drafted and how he elevated himself from 905 to being a bench player in the finals, winning a championship, to being a starter afterwards, to doing all that stuff. And her story is the same. Like if you watch old highlights of her from her WNBA career, you'll see somebody so competitive, so determined. She looks like Michael Jordan or Allen Iverson out there because she's so competitive. Like so competitive. And that's the thing that I like about her is she really wants to fucking win. And that's the thing. You know how it is as a lady. You get involved in games with men. If it's a board game, charades, it could be whatever. You could be playing basketball and you have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder because you want to beat the guys. Well, she has that. And she can beat the guys and she can compete with the guys. And in some ways, she's a better coach than she was a player. And as a player, she was a really good player, trust me. But I think she's an even better coach in her post playing career. So this interview for her is not virtue signaling. This isn't the Raptors trying to be woke, as some people are saying. This is a very legitimate candidate that if she took the job, we would be very lucky if she took the job. Seriously. Oh my God, we would be so lucky if she took the job. So yeah, it's not just because she's a her. We're not going to just interview any old women around basketball. It's a very specific thing with her. She is very good and she has all the credentials and she's the most qualified candidate, honestly, on our candidate list. It's like, look, we can look at all the other names and she has more accolades. She has more attractiveness about her than a lot of the candidates. So it's a very real thing. And it's that she deserves it. She has the merits and she is the person. She'd be fantastic at the job, honestly. In some ways, I think that we'd have some weird special charm to us if we had Becky Hammon as our head coach. There'd be some really good intangibles around the team that we wouldn't even realize right now that they would come into reality if she was around. As much as there was toxic shit around our team last year, there would be a lot of weird, positive, uplifting stuff around our team instead if she was around. Because I can tell her leadership style. Like I said, I deep dived on her yesterday and I really learned way more about what makes her tick and who she is as a person. And she is a real one. She's a bona fide winner and she's an ultimate competitor and she doesn't fuck around. Like if she's coming to somewhere, she's coming to win. Like if she took the job here in Toronto, she's not coming here to lose or be mid. She's coming here to fucking dominate the NBA, just like she dominated the WNBA last year. And she wins at a high clip. Let's just put it that way. And she knows her X's and O's. Everybody who's coached under her in San Antonio knows she's a brilliant coach with X's and O's and getting people to do what they need to do on the court and be successful. So Space Cadet saying, I understand Dan's criticisms, though I don't fully agree. I do agree roster needs a shakeup, but I think coaching played a bigger part in where we finished. Yeah, and Masai signaled that. He said he likes the core. He will move guys for fit, but for the most part, he likes this core. He likes his players. He doesn't fuck around and choose guys and bring them here because they're mistakes. He knows these are the right guys because he made that decision in the due diligence of deciding to even bring them here. So in some ways, that's part of it right there. Cool Cat saying Earl Watson is respected throughout the NBA compared to Nate Bjorkgren. Nick Nurse might be so bummed out. He loves living in Canada. Kids born here. He was supposed to be Popovich's Raptor. Sad to see and hear. Yeah, this is totally true. Like if the NBA is going to pick sides, they're going to pick Earl Watson's side as far as the players that played with him or been around him. Nate Bjorkgren, who the fuck is he? He's just a little ball guy from Iowa. So it's kind of like, yeah, I get that's totally true right there. Nick is probably bummed out. He may have realized that like some of the things he did contribute to his outcome, and that if he had just stuck tight, maybe he didn't freak out and do that fucking press conference. He could have talked to Masai at the end of the year and said, like, it could have been like this. Masai could have said, Nick, I know you really like Nate, but we have to fire him no matter what this year. He's been at the very middle of all of our problems this year, and we're going to fire him. And you want to stay here, you're going to have to be okay with me firing him. And, maybe Nick was like, Nate is my guy. And I really feel like a lot of loyalty to him and a lot of reasons. And like Masai's like, well, and it could be, there's a lot of different things that could have been about how Nick, with Masai and his mind and what he looked at it and how he looked at maybe can he separate Nick from Nate? And maybe that wasn't possible. Or maybe I really think that Masai fired him mainly because of the press conference. That he just had to. It's the optics of it. It's looking at it. This dude is not bought in. And in some ways you can't trust him. So it is really sad. Cool Cat is not what we wanted. We didn't want dismantling. We want to build and create and go up higher. Fiercely saying it would be nice to keep Rico. We should also hire a lethal shooter. I like that. Overall coaching staff communicating positively and effectively with the players, hence motivating them. I'm all about that. And Daddy Gates is saying bye, Felicia to Dan. That's right. Yeah, I mean, lethal shooter may be kind of like more doing really well just as a freelance. It can go from team to team. Who knows? He may have like he likes that freedom and stuff. It may not be like Rico, where he's like, I want to be home base with one team and travel with them. It may very well be that like he just likes being a specialist because in some ways he doesn't have to like work with teams even. You know, he can get hired individually by specific players and go and play work with them, and maybe his price is better at that, so maybe he makes more as a specialist, not a part of a team staff. So who knows? That may be part of it. Fiercey, Cool Cat saying, I truly think Watson was supposed to be like an apprentice to gain experience in our system and culture. He would be good for Scotty as a point guard, like how he developed Devin Booker. I totally believe this too. And you know, Cool Cat, that he was my first candidate when this all started to happen. That I was like, Nick Burrell should be the next coach. I really pushed him in the beginning, but there's a lot of tells saying that he's not being considered. So I've left that alone. As much as Monique and I were very much championing him and saying we want Earl as the next coach, the more we get away from the firing of Nick Nurse, the more we realize he's not in consideration. And that's why I'm not really pushing him as much as like Jerry Stackhouse or Becky Hammond at this point, is because I don't think that the signals are there that he's even being considered. And I can speculate and wonders that it has something to do with the toxic this year. Let's see. Nameless is saying, Arrivederci e buonanotte, Dan Rosette. Well, goodbye and good night. Yes, I love it. Good job, Nameless. I love my Italian lesson. Cool Cat saying, Rico was hired by the Raptors for years, so I think he will still be with us. Masai even took him to Africa to host player development events under Giants of Africa. That totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. And you know what? That may be why his IG has not changed, because he's already knowing he's under contract for a couple of years, because that's why the way he did it. Now, will it be weird for him if Earl's not on the staff with him next year? Probably not. You know, it'd be really crazy if we did hire Becky Hammond and we had Becky Hammond working with Rico Hines. In some ways, that's attractive to her. She may be like, I'd love to come and work with you guys, because you guys, part of it is I really like Rico. I think he's an interesting guy from UCLA, and I'd love to have him on my staff and work with him. You know, it could be like that. In some ways, Rico Hines could be part what's attractive for the next coach to come take the job, because they get to work with him. So Wayne's saying, as fans, we saw it, we smelled it, and we felt it. The toxicity affected the team, which is fairly young group, and was trying their best to maintain their professional career without consistent coaching. You know, some of these guys may have grown up in households where there was fighting with parents and spouses of their parents or whatever, and that they were used to this kind of feeling. In fact, that may have been the weirdness for Chris Boucher, is like, man, this kind of feels like the kitchen with mom and her ex-boyfriend that I hated that fucking time, and why I left the house and fucking lived in a bus for a year. Yeah, it could have felt like that a little bit. There may have been some PTSD for the players from the weird fighting between the coaches around them, just like their parents or somebody around them when they were younger. That could have very well been for some of their cases. You know, we know Chris had issues with some of her mom's boyfriends at a certain point as a teenager, and he moved out. He left home because of this shit. So, you know, who knows? That could be a little bit of traumatizing, because it's kind of like, this is kind of fucking like when I was a kid and my parents were fighting or something. Who knows? Let's see. Amit's saying the 12th woman. That's right. I said the 12th man. I apologize. In some ways, I'm going to have to just like get rid of, if she becomes our head coach, we're going to have to really deal with like gender and pronouns in a different way. I think I'm going to have to be like training myself. Fiercey saying people like Dan and Pensair won't have anything to say next year. Just watch us going. That's right, Fiercey. That's right. Respect. That's the real ones. This is a real fan. This is a positive fan that wants good things to cheer for. What the fuck are you doing, Robert and Dan? What are you doing with your lives? Are you such miserable fucks that you just want to be toxic? You just want to be trolls? You just like criticizing shit? Is this what you're all about? Does this make you feel better, you little man? To fucking criticize the Raptors and dump all over them all the time, or to come fuck with Raptors fans that are real and passionate for the team? Does this make you feel better? Does it? You fucking sad fuck. This is the life you're living like this, you troll ass motherfucker. Seriously, fiercely, I'm with you. Let's make them miserable in our success. Yeah. All right. This is Donald Morez. Good to see a new name, Donald. Let's see what you're saying today. Every morning, 9:30 a.m. I appreciate your subscription. Hey, Raptors freak. I got a few questions. Do you think this team makes sense together? Okay, that's a good question. As in the redundancy of players that are basically the same, and what's up with the shooting? Fantastic first question. See, this is not belittling. This is not insulting. This is constructive, and it's something he probably really wants to know. In some ways, I wonder about the fit of this team. And because Masai did say something about fit in his end of season interview, that really makes it think he's going to go over everything meticulously and really think about the players that we have on this team and how they interconnect, how they play together, whether they make sense. I know you're alluding to Vision 6-9. That the fact that Bobby Webster and Masai Ujiri have accumulated such great athletes that are around all around athletes, but not necessarily shooters, that this has been shown to be an Achilles heel and a weakness for our team. And this is totally true. You're exactly right. In some ways, we cannot be just positionless and 6'9". We need to have different roles. And I think that's the biggest thing we may have learned this year is we got to flesh out this roster with different kinds of roles and especially shooters. That we lacked good shooting this year and that we need to get more good shooters. If we lose Gary Trent Jr. this summer, we're definitely going to have to replace him. The fact that we've got Otto Porter Jr. hopefully coming back healthy next year can help with this. The fact that we retained Joe Wieskamp and kept him around is really signaling that we want to give him a good shot to hopefully help us with the three-point shooting next season. So some of it will be little moves this summer. It could be the reemergence and better shooting of three-pointers by Scotty and Pascal. It could be, and I agree with you, that the Vision 6-9, the ambiguity of having the whole kind of same frame guy around the whole team is not worked completely. The getting Jakob Pertl helped a big, huge part of some of our flaws. And going back to more traditional lineup with a point guard and a center at times is going to be way smarter. And I'm all about that. Role definition, giving these guys short-term goals in the game so that they can have roles and understand what they're supposed to be doing. And then really kind of like making more traditional team lineups out there than having just everybody be like OG, Scotty, Precious, and Pascal. That all those guys are the same kind of player. I totally get what you're saying. And this is a big thing that we got to really figure out this summer because we won't be successful until we figure out our roles and these kind of things. So hopefully a new coach will come in and they'll say like, look, Scotty, I know that you were doing this with Nick, but this is what I want to do with you. And we're going to give you a whole different kind of like scheme of how you're going about what you're doing with your development. And boom, you could see a whole change night and day from what last year with the confusion, the dysfunction, the weirdness, the ambiguity of roles, and having really clearly defined roles next year with the same exact people. That we could have the same team next year and they're just structured in a better way and set out in the right direction in the right way with specific short-term goals with long-term goals. You could see it totally different with the same players. So I know that Masai's probably going to make a big move though this summer. In fact, I'm already predicting he's going to do a Kawhi level deal this summer. He'll get a new coach and he'll do a Kawhi level deal just like he did the summer of 2018. So we'll see. There's definitely going to be some changes on the roster that will hopefully fix some of what you're talking about here as far as the shooting and just the more clear roles on our team. But thank you for the question. And I hope I answered some of it with that. Does that make sense what I'm kind of saying? Because a lot of people see what you're saying and they think, well, we just got to blow it up and start over. Or we got to find guys that will fit better together. Pascal, Scotty, Fred, OG, whatever. They feel like that's what it is, but it really is how they're organized. If they're organized much better, we'll get way better results next year. So thank you, Donald, for your comment. And that is how you do it, Dan. That's how you do it. Donald's showing you right there. Cool Cat saying, it's too early for Earl Watson to be interviewed for the head coach. He needs time to learn our culture. However, Griffin deserved the head coach interview because of history, culture, and knowledge. He's older. He has been around our team a long, long time. He's been an assistant coach much longer than Earl Watson. In some ways, you're right. Earl's still a younger kind of assistant coach. I would say he may be ready, but if there's some sort of weirdness because of what happened this year, I could see why he's being excluded from being interviewed. So Amit's saying, I think Malachi only has next year to prove himself, then he's done. I said that last summer. That Malachi better prove himself this year. And if he doesn't, he may be done this summer. And that may very well be true still, guys. That, the Malachi thing with him, he may be part of a trade, or maybe we just don't bring him back for some reason, for whatever reason. Who knows? I would say anything is on the table as far as like how we change our team. The only person that's not is Scotty Barnes. So we know that anybody could be moved and anything could happen, including Malachi. I said this about Malachi last year. It's like, if he don't fucking do it this year, he needs to go. Now, how did he do it this year, though? He did show like good fill-in minutes at times, and he did show more development and improvement. So in some ways, you can't get at him for that. It's really Nick not playing him, So who knows? I don't know where Malachi is with things. I do know that Masai likes him a lot, and that he really, really wants him to succeed as a draft pick of his. So he's not going to throw him out just like with the garbage. He really does want him to succeed, especially since he's invested so many years in him already. Let's see. Monique saying the tough thing for me when I go on Earl's Instagram page, you would see Earl Jr. in his Raptors jersey practice shooting. So cute and everything. Yeah, Earl's posting stuff on his Instagram, and it really is centered around his kid and the kid playing basketball. And I like to see that. It may be that once again, he's got to adjust to something that's changing here. I think him not having Toronto Raptors on his page really says a lot right there. It really, really says a lot. Fiercely saying Masai gave Nick Nurse the bench pieces. There's a reason why they had to pick who would remain on the roster earlier this season. They are talented and could have been utilized way better, in my opinion. I completely agree. Delano and Koloko and Jeff Doughton Jr., those three guys in particular, could have contributed to our team way more this year than they did. A lot of people were saying, why aren't you fucking playing Koloko more? Why didn't you play Jeff Doughton more, Nick? You really failed with Jeff Doughton and Delano specifically. Like, Delano is a good player, and he showed so much good things from this past summer in playing for Team Canada and South America. He absolutely killed it in the summer league. He was showing all these strong like jumps in his development and level of play that we never really tried to discover during the season because he just never got time. And that is a failure on Nick Nurse. You did not play Toronto's favorite 45 bus from Rexdale enough this season. And that's a huge part of why Masai fired him, is a big part right there. Let's see. Wayne saying Grange on Will Lewis alluding to tons of drama with the coaching staff, but he was not ready to spill the beans. Seems to be more toxic drama to come out by summer. Hope that Team Canada can endure. Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe they're going to be like putting Team Canada out of their misery because they're not going to get past this round of international play, and they won't even have to worry about the Olympics. And they'll be able to fire Nick Nurse from being the coach of Team Canada this fall. It's almost like Nick's got to do the impossible with Team Canada in this tournament and get them that Olympic berth to maybe keep that job. I don't know. We'll have to see. Now, with Nate around that team also, I don't know how that's going to work. It could be like, I don't know. It could be very separate. And maybe Rowan Barrett doesn't even look at Nate Bjorgen as a problem in these kind of ways. Maybe it's a different kind of thing in that level and with what's happening there. Maybe he can get away with treating the people underneath him like trash because he just can. I don't know. It could be like that. Let's see. Cool Cat saying we could easily have 48 wins this year. Just a few minutes rest for the fourth quarter legs of our core players, we would have benefited us greatly. Exactly. Not overplaying the stars the whole fucking game, so they're absolutely exhausted in the last 2 minutes. Yes. And then like just better coaching in close situations where the ball didn't bounce our way. Or we had something stupid like AJ Griffin happen. There were a couple of games that got away from us that were very winnable, and they know that. The players know that. The coaches know that. We know that. We saw it. And that could have very much changed our win total in this season. And you can see how much that would have changed where we were in the placement on the seeding of the standings. Like just 5 wins would be putting us in the playoffs without even a fucking play-in having to play in. So that's what I'm saying. It was that close. The parity was so much like that. And with our dysfunction, we still managed to be 500. That's amazing. And that bodes well for next season with a functional, non-toxic team. So it's awesome. It's awesome. I love it. Let's see. Wayne saying, "Them boys," is that disqualifying comment sensitive? I don't know about that. I think that's just like, that's just the way she is. She's just got a down home kind of thing. You gotta understand, this is a woman in a men's world in a lot of ways, and we can't get mad at her for calling us boys, just like we might call them ladies or girls. I don't want to get mad at her for this. In some ways, we don't want to be sensitive as men because we were called boys. That's not nice. I don't get mad at somebody if they call me the boys or something like that. It's really kind of like it's not what you guys think. In some ways, let's not paint into it too much that the weight of the word boys has anything to it. It definitely doesn't have anything racial. Let's put it that way. If we're going in that direction, it's really as cut and dry as just as simple as like the boys. Oh, well, let's not talk about the boys right now. We're talking about the girls and the Las Vegas Aces, is basically what she was trying to say. Smooth saying, on paper, Becky Hammond looked to be the most qualified and perhaps the best fit. Do you think she wants the Toronto job? I always thought she was a Spurs lifer waiting for Pop to retire. That's what's unclear about this. In some ways, the timing of us offering her the job isn't maybe on her schedule for how she wants to do things. I think that really, in some ways, she's placing it with the Popovich retirement. That maybe it's the kind of thing that's like, I'll coach the Aces and build something really awesome here. And then when he walks away in like 2 or 3 years, then I'll go take the San Antonio job. I think that that's all unspoken and said, and it's understood. And I think that that is how it's going to go. But it could very well be we throw some sort of wrench in the whole schedule of things, and she jumps and takes the opportunity with us now. But it may not be that way. It may, like I said, you're asking me, do I think she'll want the job here? I don't know. In some ways, she's the kind of person that likes challenges and likes really going into new arenas and conquering them. And in some ways, she's already conquered the WNBA. And some people are getting upset because it's like, look, this is just the pure amount of facts of it. The NBA generates way more revenue than the WNBA. The NBA is more prestigious than the WNBA. And this is not a slighting women or men kind of thing. This is just the damn truth about it. And some people are saying, well, maybe she needs to take a stand and just stay with the Aces to make a point that, I don't care about your stupid men's league. I'm in the women's league. But in some ways, that doesn't fit or benefit like women in coaching in the NBA, because it's kind of you're at the point you could push that up and go further than anybody has, but you're deciding not to. In some ways, that's not who she is as a personality. In fact, that's one of the things I was assessing yesterday, is that she's very much somebody who likes to break barriers and go farther and beyond than where she does stuff. It's just that the timing is not exactly right with the plans that she has with the Aces. And that's the thing that is going to hold her with them, is that she's made a very much a commitment to be their coach. And in some ways, she may not want to cut out after 1 year high and dry and do that to them. And that will very much be the reason why she doesn't take the job here. It won't be because it's not an attractive job, or it's not because she wouldn't want to do it. It's just that it supersedes her loyalty and her responsibility of duty to what she's committed to the Aces first. So we'll have to see. Is she going to do that or not? In some ways, I'm already predicting she's not going to take the job with us. That it may be just too close to the WNBA season. She doesn't want to cause all kinds of problems for them, where they have to go and find a new coach for their team all of a sudden. That's why I was kind of trying to figure it out. Well, can she do both? Can we hire her and she can still coach them this season? Well, that's a distraction in some ways. It's like we hire her as the coach of the Toronto Raptors tomorrow, and she's still going to do the Aces season this summer. That's a lame duck coach. And she may not be, they'll be like, oh man, she's not going to be here next year. And that could really hurt a team. In some ways, you don't want that. That's part of the thing was coming up with Nick for next year, is if he didn't get more than the year next year on his contract, some people won't respect him as much because they may be like, he's leaving. So that's what I'm saying. They have to really walk the tightrope with this, with the timing of the WNBA season and the NBA season. And it may be that she's just like, I don't even want to mess with this. I want to just stick with my ladies and be here in Las Vegas. So yeah, it's a good question. I appreciate that one, Smooth. As far as what will she take the job, that's not up to us. That's what I'm saying. She has all the power in this situation. Shir Khan saying the new folks who are entering the chat without knowing Raptor Freak history don't know what they're talking about. We know team success and failure falls on everybody in the organization, but there are levels to it. That's right. Shir Khan, Rookie of the Year. Thank you for maybe you need to give a little class orientation to the new people. That's right. NBA Quick Takes is here. And that is Van Hoot. He's saying, please, no woman coach, please. Whoa. Well, why? Why though? It's not because she's a woman, right? That's not what it is. Seriously, it shouldn't be that reason. I know some people are worried that it would cause a circus. Oh, it's going to cause a distraction. That's bullshit. If it causes any of that kind of stuff, it'll be positive and it'll be good. Trust me. It's not going to be a distraction. She's going to be amazing if she took the job. And we'd be so lucky if she took the job. So yeah, I'm not with you on this. I'm okay with a lady coach, a woman coach. If they're very good at their job, that's all that matters, and that's what it should be for everybody. Cool Cat saying NBA media coverage usually say men with NBA and say girls of the WNBA. So she switched it around to mess with the media talk and said women of the NBA and boys of the NBA. That's the backstory. I'm with that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's equality. And in some ways, you give you a little taste of the medicine the other way. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm not going to punch down, obviously. That's the thing. And so, if she's punching up, I'm with her. I'm punching up with her. And I don't get mad because I'm a man. And it's like, oh, she's slighting us and calling us boys. This is bullshit. Come on, have a thicker skin, y'all. And if that really upsets you're a little too sensitive, maybe in some ways. No disrespect to people in this chat that have had a problem with it. I'm just saying, think about why that bugs you and why should it bug you? It shouldn't. It's just words. It's dumb. But yeah, I like what Cool Cat's saying. And if she did that on purpose in that kind of way, I'm all for it. There's nothing wrong with that. Nameless saying, hey, man, I want my damn stroke, bro. You want your strike? All right, you got your damn strike, Nameless. You got a strike. Leslie saying, good morning, Raptor Freaks. As a young girl back in the day, as a baseball and basketball fan, I wanted to be a ref or an umpire, but I never saw it. Continue. That's Leslie, that's cool. Well, that's what I'm saying. This is important. Now, people that say, all right, the players won't listen to her because she's a woman. That's bullshit. Because look at this. All right, we could take each individual Raptor and think about them in different ones. You name a Raptor, let's think about them. All right, Fred, first of all, of course, Fred, I've already talked about how Fred's going to totally connect with her because they are very much the same person, just in different bodies in a lot of ways. And the thing is this, Fred's thinking, he said this recently, that, you know what? He really truly believes in women's equality in sports because he's got a daughter. And in some ways, he wants to be that kind of father that shows that, women can do whatever. So why would he reject Becky Hammon as a coach when he has a daughter that he wants to show like a good example to? In fact, this is a very good learning example for Sana and the other daughters and children of the Raptors. If they have daughters, this is a great opportunity to daddy has a female coach and oh, that's cool. And see, you could do it too, Sona. Oh yeah, I could be a coach someday. That's part of it that people don't realize. Is like what Leslie's saying. She wanted to be a ref or an umpire. Well, she saw Violet Palmer out there. She thought she could. Now, the little girl wants to be a coach in the NBA. She sees Becky Hammon doing it, and she thinks she can do it. So I'm saying, it's like, all right, Scotty may respect her just because he has a general respect for women because he's raised right by his mother and other people around him. So he would have very much, I've seen it on his stream, Fiercey, you were there. We saw how Scotty was with the ladies in the chat also, very much, being very respectful and not being a chauvinist or misogynist or anything like that. He's enlightened and woke enough to not see gender issues, to have a problem with a woman coaching him. And as I said before, OG, Pascal, Precious, these guys all have very strong sisters in their family. Trust me, these are siblings of them, and that they very much respect them and look up to them as some of them older sisters who are in charge and helped them when they were growing up. So there's all kinds of reasons why the Raptors would accept her as a coach, regardless of her gender, because in some ways they're smart enough and woke enough to understand how good this is for young women coming up, like their own children even. So there's that whole side to it too. So when people make arguments that the players won't respect her, that's bullshit. Trust me, that's bullshit because they want to be a good example for other people to show that you should respect women in that kind of way. And there you go. There you go, right there. You want your damn strike, bro. All right. Cowboy saying, I think when we get our new coach, Ron Harper Jr. and Banton will be a big part of our new bench mob. I hope so. I think that would be awesome. It's funny because Ron Harper Jr. has such weird connections. I was talking yesterday about Dr. Alex and all of his years on the Lakers. Obviously, Dr. Alex was very close with Ron Harper Sr. So in some ways, Dr. Alex may have some really weird stories for Ron Harper Jr. about his dad and being around him on the Lakers team during the 2000s. That's kind of fun. There's probably a pretty cool bond between Dr. Alex and Ron Harper Jr. just because of that family linkage of his dad and him being around his dad from before. You think about those kind of connections, and it's fun, and you really start to understand the NBA is a family because there are a lot of like friendships and connections all over the place in the league. Let's see. Cool Cat saying, Rapid Freak, Pascal didn't mention Rico or Watson. He publicly praised support staff names that are not on his personal development team. Pascal publicly wanted to use his leverage to praise their reputation. You go, Pascal. I love that. Well, he probably doesn't have to say anything about Rico because it's very, very much documented the relationship and how he feels about Rico. He's said it a lot of times on his stuff on YouTube and different places about Rico and what he's done for him and how much he really appreciates him and his development. So yeah, it goes without saying, I guess. But yeah, I think I remember kind of what you were saying in his interview. I only watched his interview once, and but I do remember him saying something like that. What you're saying is that he wanted to praise the support. Uh, Leslie saying sometimes it's so frustrating. Most of us females don't want the job because of our genitals. Just hire me because I'm qualified. See, this is the thing that we don't understand as guys is that women have had to go like above and beyond. Now, people of different races, sure. It's like if you're a black guy and you're trying to get a job against white people, you have to be like 5 times better sometimes. So it's that kind of situation in these kind of situations. Like Leslie wants the job, well, she has to be even better than every other guy who's in the candidate because she's going to get a discount because she's a woman in some ways. This is the way it's been in corporate America and corporate structures. In some ways, it's really gross and disgusting, and that's part of it. That's why we know she really is qualified for the job because she's being considered for it. She has to be 5 times better to get the job, and that's why I know she's the best person for the job because her just being even considered signals this from the struggle that women have had in every kind of job search as far as they have to be so much better and perfect and all these kind of things just to get the job, whereas guys can be lazy and be fuck offs and they just stumble into jobs, especially if you're a white male. That is a lot easier in those ways. Cowboy saying, what about Stackhouse as head coach and Becky as assistant coach? That doesn't make any sense. She won't do that, man. She won't do that. She'll be assistant coach for Popovich in San Antonio at that stage, but now she's a head coach. And she'd much rather be a head coach in the WNBA than be an assistant coach in Toronto. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't help her, Cowboy. Nope, it's head coach or nothing. And it should be that way for her. She deserves it. So no, that won't work. That won't work. Leslie's saying that NBA quick takes. What? Seriously? I don't know what Van Hoot's saying there. It could be something silly or whatever. It is what it is. Let's see. Or it's not Van Hoot. It's a different channel. I shouldn't say that's Van Hoot. Van Hoot's Basketball Rewind. NBA Quick Takes is somebody totally different. So I don't know who that is. It's not Van Hoot. I want to clarify real quick. Nameless is saying it just makes sense. Becky takes the first female head coach role in Toronto. Come home, Becky. Just do it. Come and be woke with us. The woke. The people that are arguing and saying we're woke for doing this, no. We're just smart. We're doing our homework, and she's the right person. In some ways, maybe we don't want to be that team that breaks the barrier, that brings in a first female coach. I understand why some people are saying, let's not even experiment with this. Let's let somebody else do it. Some ways the Spurs want to be that team, but it's just Popovich isn't ready to retire. So maybe we should just let San Antonio get that accolade and have it with their franchise down the road because they're already kind of the ones that kind of put the investment of time in her to have her come back around and be their head coach after Pop retires. In some ways, it's not natural for us to come in and just take her from the Las Vegas Aces and put her on our team. So, but we'll see. It's really up to her. Like I said, if she wants to do it, she'll do it. But if she doesn't, she won't. And that's exactly how it should be. It has nothing to do with whether Masai is probably like, you can have the job, Becky, if you want it. You just let us know. I'll bet you that's how he'll be. He'll be like, you know what? We'll hire you. If you want to take this job here, we'll take you. It's all up to you, Becky, if you want to take it or not. Let's see. Cowboy saying, sick him, Leslie and Hart. What's wrong with a woman coach? Maybe he doesn't like his mom. I think a woman coaching the Raptors, let's go, Raptors and Freaks. I've alluded to the fact that this could have actually a very beneficial kind of thing. There's a movie that came out in the 80s with Goldie Hawn called Wildcats. And I don't know if you guys have seen this movie. It's an old 80s movie, old head like me. Maybe y'all want to watch it. And basically what happens is it's a football team. And Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes are on the team. There's a couple other famous people in this movie. And they need a new coach, and they end up hiring Goldie Hawn as a female coach for this team. And it's all about the ins and outs of having a female coach coaching men, coaching football. And it's very interesting. In fact, some of the stuff that happens in that movie, it's a comedy and it's a feel good comedy, but there are issues that come up in that movie that you would have to think about a woman coaching men. And in fact, even though it's a comedy, it's very lighthearted and it's fun. There's some messages in it that are very important. And if you are a fan of good 80s comedies, go check out Wildcats, starring Goldie Hawn, Wesley Snipes, and Woody Harrelson from like 1984 or 5 or something. Fantastic movie. And it kind of is on this topic of what we're talking about right now. So let's see. G saying, on a slightly different note, there's a video of Drew last year saying he would seriously consider retiring after his 2-year extension. Teams are aging out. Raptors are still so young. No, he said this. And he said that he means it, retiring. Yeah, he said he's going to retire when this contract's up. And I believe him. People don't realize that Drew Holiday's been in this league forever and that he may be like, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. And this is enough. You know, that kind of stuff happens for real. And I believe him. When he says that, I believe him. I do. Donald's saying, okay, thanks for that answer. Another thing, do you do videos, lives about what you want to see from the players coming into the next year? I do everything. Like for the most part, Donald, we just come in every day and talk about the daily stuff that's going on. Like I'll do another segment right now where I'm going to do the ref report for today. There are 2 games today in the NBA playoffs. We've got Golden State against the Sacramento Kings in Game 7 in Sacramento. Very, very important game. Obviously, Scott Foster is the crew chief for this game tonight. Kevin Scott and Curtis Blair round out the ref crew. All 3 refs favor the Golden State Warriors historically with percentage-wise. That's not shocking because the Sacramento Kings have been a bad team for a long time. And of course, the win percentage that the Warriors would have is higher. But some of it is very, very starkly high. Like Golden State Warriors are like one of the highest winning teams under Curtis Blair when he refs. And the Sacramento Kings are one of the lowest winning teams in reverse. So the ref crew very much favors the Golden State Warriors tonight in Game 7, even though Sacramento is at home. So it should be a very good battle. I'd say it's pretty even. Sacramento has a good chance to win this game, but the refs historically show that they favor the Warriors, just so you guys know going in. Game 1 of Miami at New York is today. Tony Brothers is the crew chief in New York with Bill Kennedy and Tyler Ford. All 3 of the refs favor the Miami Heat. There's no favoritism for the Knicks, even though they're at home and they're going to have the home crowd. Tony Brothers actually hates the Knicks. They're the worst team winning percentage out of all 30 teams with Tony Brothers. So just so y'all know, Tony Brothers is going to be coming in this game and as a Knick hater. So the Knicks fans are maybe really hating Tony Brothers at the end of the day. We'll have to see how this script is written with the teams playing, how they play. Jimmy Butler shows up and has a big-time game. Fantastic stuff. Game 1, Miami, New York. So there you go. The ref crews are both favoring the away teams in the games today for the playoffs, just so y'all know. A little ref report for the stuff that's going on today. Yeah, we'll do like especially during training camp and during summer league, I'll be here every day talking about every single little thing that happens with the Raptors. So yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. I don't do like live streams during the games, like where I'm watching it. I find that too distracting, and I like to just watch the game and then talk about it later. But after every single game, we do a reaction and talk about every game from the last season. You can look at my library and kind of look over my old content, and you can kind of see the kind of stuff that I've done in the past. There's like almost 2 years. I've done a live stream every single morning for 2 years now. Starting in September, it'll be 2 years straight. And I've got to keep the streak going. I want to get to like 1,000 streaks, 1,000, 10,000 in a row. So I'm going to be doing this for a few years. So Quick Takes is saying, just get Jerry Stackhouse for the head coach. I'm okay with that. If we hire Jerry Stackhouse, I'll be very happy with that. Nameless is saying that, hang on, it jumped. People are taking what Udoka said as a slight. I don't see it that way at all. It really was a compliment incognito. Us being too woke is code for too progressive to accept my behavior. Yeah, exactly. We got to remember, Nameless, Ime Udoka is now coaching in the state of Texas. This is a place where they're trying to ban abortion and burn books. And in some ways, he has to play to his fan base. So if he can show that he's ignorant and anti-woke, they probably love him more. It's like all these Texas people are probably like, oh, who's this new coach for the Rockets? Oh, he just told the Raptors they're too woke. Oh, I like him. He thinks he hates woke people. Well, I hate them too. So I'm going to get behind the Houston Rockets this year because their coach is anti-woke. It could be as simple as that. He's pandering to his new fan base. It's like, but I'm with you. I think it's a compliment too. As like woke to me means you're progressive, you're open-minded, and you're willing to like be accepting of others. And it's not like a bad thing to me. It's like it's very loaded term right now. In some ways, MA is very smart to use it the way he did because it will make Rockets fans more like him. Cowboys saying maybe Becky as head coach and Stackhouse as assistant head coach. Well, that doesn't benefit Stack. That's what I'm saying. We can't get both of them. Just get over that idea, Bradley, because it doesn't make sense. It's like Stackhouse is pretty good where he's at with Vanderbilt too. He's in a similar kind of situation as Becky, but not as attractive. In some ways, it's more attractive for him to make the leap and be the coach of the Raptors than Becky leaping from the Aces to the Raptors. So, but that's really what it is. It's like they got to think about the house they're already sitting in and like leaving. What would that is this better? Like, I feel like things are pretty good here in Vanderbilt. Things have been going nice since I've been here. Do I want to mess that up? It's that kind of thinking. And Becky, in some ways, she has more to risk leaving the Aces and come to Toronto than Jerry does. So I could see Jerry making the jump more likely than Becky, just because Becky's kind of set up to win a lot and win a lot of championships in the WNBA very soon. They just got Candace Parker. This is the craziest shit. The Las Vegas Aces just won the championship, dominating wise, and they went and got Candace Parker, former Raptor Anthony Parker's sister, who's one of the best scorers in the league. The rich get richer, so she's really kind of coaching a super team in the WNBA, and that's part of the reason why it's super attractive. Plus, they just got this new facility. It's really hot. Their fan base is on fire. It's bringing a lot of more attention to the WNBA. And some people will say, the argument is, will this bring more attention or take away from the attention from the WNBA if she's hired by the Toronto Raptors? Because it could go either way. I think it would bring more attention ultimately to the WNBA in the long run, but in the short run, maybe not. Because it is very attractive to have her heading up that super team out of Las Vegas. It really, really is. Cool Cat saying, due to injuries, I think we need a backup for each player position at minimum. Look around the league. When teams are devastated by injuries, we also need more than one way to win. Chip team way. This is something that's become evident in the games in the playoffs. Is like, look, you can have a good team in the regular season, but if you don't adjust to coaches' adjustments quickly in the game, just like Nick Nurse is really good at. That's the one thing he's really good at for sure. Spoelstra is a master at this. And that's the difference between Spoelstra beating Budenholzer is the adjustment game. That there's certain things that didn't get adjusted in the Milwaukee-Miami series fast enough, and that is why Milwaukee's sitting at home now. And that is a whole big part of being successful in the playoffs. You have to be versatile to a certain extent and have problem-solving skills for when the other team throws out new schemes that you have to adjust to and overcome. And some of the teams that aren't quick at adjusting, like Dwayne Casey's old Raptors teams, they see the door quicker. And that is part of what you're talking about here with Cool Cat. I totally agree with this. And then you can look at the Grizzlies without Steven Adams. They needed another kind of center guy behind him to fill in his place. And that hurt them. And you're exactly right. We want backups for backups for backups. They're extending the roster. You can have 18 guys on the roster next year because there's going to be 3 two-ways. So we had 17 this year. We're going to have an extra player for next year. That's going to cause an ability to have more depth at each position. In some ways, that's what I'm saying. Like, we got Jakob now. We got Koloko. That's 2 centers. I like a 3-man depth chart just in case. So in some ways, I would love to get a third center that's capable, that would be around our roster of 18, so that we have depth at that position. Exactly what you're saying. Now, the point guard's the other place where we could really get more depth. You got Freddie. We kind of have Pascal and Scotty kind of in the mix with the point guard kind of stuff. And then I really like Jeff Dowtin Jr., that in some ways he needs to be our backup point guard for sure, because he needs to get more responsibility with that. But we have different looks. You got Malachi, you got Delano. But in some ways, we really want a specific, this is the designated for sure backup point guard who's the leader of the bench team like Fred was before. and he can lead them and compete against the starters and bring the best against them. Jeffrey Dowtin Jr., or is it Fred reverting back to the bench and being the leader of the bench mob with a different starting lineup? That's the kind of outside thinking we're thinking here. But I agree with Cool Cat. We need backups for sure. Cool Cat saying in terms of player movement, I think at least one of Pascal, Fred, or OG will be moved. The writing's on the wall in some ways. Like I said, if this is how his pattern is, he's going to fire the coach and then he's going to go and make a big, huge Kawhi Leonard move. It could be, and it could be Kawhi Leonard once again. That's the crazy thing. We could be trading for Kawhi again all of a sudden this summer. Nameless is saying, Cowboy, I don't think you can go wrong with either option, really. Flip a coin, but I think of it, if it was going to be Earl, it would have been done already. Rapamente. Yeah, that may be true. That may be true. If it was just going to be Earl, it would have happened already. Although I'm pretty sure Masai is really gaming it to like look and see who's going to be available, see what happens in the first couple rounds of the playoffs with how teams go out. And, Budenholzer was in trouble, but I don't think he is at this point. I think the fans realize it is a tragedy and that he was in a place of mourning, and that's why he didn't do as well. So I don't think he's in trouble at this point. They've backed off on him, rightfully so, considering what's happened to him just recently with his brother dying. But, other teams, it could be very well like that. Darvin Ham with LA, there's a couple other teams that could go out in the next round, and there could be like flipping stuff around in certain ways. And Masai may be waiting to see how that dust settles. And who knows? NBA Quick Take saying women should coach woman and man should coach man. Come on, people. Well, go watch Wildcats, NBA Quick Takes, and you'll see that that's not true. That you need to go watch Goldie Hawn and have a feel-good 80s movie afternoon. Go watch Wildcats, NBA Quick Takes. That's your homework to teach you to get rid of your misogynist belief right there. That's right. That's my quick take on your quick take. Go watch Wildcats. Wayne Strainer saying the best coaches need to be in the more profitable league, which just happens to be the NBA right now. Becky should be a coach in the NBA. If it's us, all the better. She sure has a big decision to make. That's right. It really is a huge decision that she has some really cool options in her life. These are great decisions. Like, really, come on. This is amazing. And you're right. This is exactly right. She wants to be at the top of her profession. The top of her profession is in the NBA. I hate to say that, ladies. I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to slight y'all. But the NBA is the end all be all of the top of basketball in the whole entire world. That's just how it is. It's just how it is. And it's a place where she can make the most money. She can make the most prestige. She can have the most added to her legend by doing this. So in some ways, that's part of it. But in some ways, it's very comfortable and set up for her where she's already at. So what is it, Becky? You're going to have to weigh it all out and figure it out. Another big factor in this is going to be her family. I'm going to tell you that right now. She has a very young family. She has young children with her wife. And they may very much factor in their decision because they may be already set up real nice in Las Vegas. And that may be part of the reason why they're not coming to Toronto, is that they have to consider these kids that are like around 5 years old and younger. So she is very much like Fred, as far as she has children that are young and a family to consider in her decisions. And that's the same thing for Fred also when people are saying, oh, he's going to leave. Well, he doesn't really want to pack up his young family and move them somewhere else. Trust me. All right, let's keep going. Smooth saying at Cowboy, I don't see Stackhouse being an assistant anymore. He's done that in Toronto, Memphis. Yeah, he's ready. That's kind of like I've said in the last week or so. These coaches are like fruit. The banana is green for a while, and you got to wait for it to ripen up and to be ready. And at that stage, it needs to go to that job. Now, he's already proven that he's next for head coaching and not an assistant coaching job. Going from Vanderbilt head coach to assistant coach in the NBA is a step down. I'm sorry. It just is. He's a head coach right now. And in some ways, that is not the direction he wants to go. He goes and takes a higher, more high-profile coaching job with another program in college basketball. That's different because that can be a step up. Like, say he goes from Vanderbilt to UNC and he's the head coach of UNC. That's a step up. But going from a head coach of Vanderbilt to being an assistant coach back on the Raptors, that's not a step up. That's a step down. And that's why the head coach title needs to be involved for Jerry. He's not going to come back to the NBA just to be an assistant coach. He needs to be a head coach. And especially the way he talked about how he thought he was going to be the head coach when Nick got hired. That's the thing. He was already ready to be the head coach then. Well, he's even more ready now. That fruit ripened up even more in a couple of years in Vanderbilt with experience and winning and different things. So now that fruit is even more ripe. And that's what I'm saying. You know, some of the younger guys on that list on my spreadsheet, like Charles Lee, what you call it, Young for Young, and then what was the other guy, Johnson. Those guys are too young, and they're green still. They haven't ripened yet, but they're already in consideration, and they're on that tree of coaches that you can pick the fruit from. But when it's ripened more, then you go pick them and take them for a head coaching job. But in the beginning, they get practice interviews. They come in and they learn the routine of how you do interviews to try and get a head coaching job. They go through it a bunch of times. And then maybe like 12 interviews down the road in their whole career, they finally get one of those jobs. It's just part of the process. But they have to start coming in for the interviews. But they're green fruit and they're not ready to be picked. Becky Hammond's ready to be picked. Jerry Stackhouse is ready to be picked. But some of those other guys on the candidate list are not. They're not ready. And they're just going to go through the motions of the interview process of trying to be a head coach in the NBA. Let's see. Leslie's saying at Nameless at Canadian Cowboy, thank you for being open-minded and understanding. I'm just a girl in the world, no doubt. I'm just a girl in the world. Please listen to this song, peeps. I love No Doubt. Don't speak. I know just what you're saying. I know you need no explaining. Don't tell me cause it hurts. That's how I was this year when everybody was talking about toxicity on the Raptors. I was like, no, don't speak. I know just what you're saying. You know, it's kind of how it was. We're getting our Gwen Stefani in today. All right. G saying many men coach women's teams. Winners need to coach. Need to see if what I will help wins and not gender. This is exactly true. Why are there so many male coaches in the WNBA over the history of it? It's only fair. If she's good and she knows what she's doing, she can coach the men. Trust me. Cool Cat saying, in all fairness, Flynn, Banton, Coloco, Doughton Jr. should have been used more this year. Flynn is a true shooter, which can't be underestimated. Yes, and we didn't get to see the fruits of that enough. Not enough situations for Malachi to really excel and succeed because he's not put in those situations by Nick Nurse. And Eric Flynn was right. Oh my gosh, we're finding out that David Thorpe, Eric Flynn, they were all right. Cowboys saying, I vote for Nameless to get a wrench, not a strike. Also, I love every player on this team, but if we do a big trade, I think it should be Pascal. I hope OG and Freddie are lifers. I would like to see Freddie coach. Yeah, I like your comment all around. I don't want to see Pascal go, but if Masai deems this is the right move, we got to trust in Masai and see what happens. He wants to do what's best for the Raptors. He's going to do what's best for the Raptors. And I don't frivolously say I want to see Pascal, Freddie, or OG leaving. If it happens and concretely happens, then we'll talk about it. But I'm not going to speculate, throw them under the bus, or say, let's get fucking rid of these guys, because I do see value in them. And I love those guys. As a Raptor fan, if you love these, you got to love these players. If you don't love these players, you're not really a fan. And that's why I don't get behind Fred haters, because y'all rationally hate Fred, and it doesn't suit or serve this team the way you hate him. And that's why I get mad about that. It's a really big thing. This whole season, the Fred hate was out of control, and I'm a fucking on the front lines fighting against it with Fred propaganda. Fuck that shit. You talk shit about Fred, you piss me off. You really do. All right, Monique's saying WNBA game, Toronto and Scarborough Shooting Stars literally almost play in the same week, but pretty big on these playoffs, but meh. She's watching the playoffs, but she's kind of like, the playoffs have been super exciting. I'm not even watching them, and I can tell they're exciting and amazing and doing really well. In fact, this may be one of the best playoff seasons in a long time, and I can agree with that. And some of it is just the enthusiasm. Some of it is New York and the Lakers being involved and actually being power players finally in the postseason again. So it's kind of good. Name is saying, hi, I love you all. My peeps pound it. Bam, 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 bam. All right. Cool Cat saying, fun fact, Nick Nurse will be in Raptors facility and same staff working with Team Canada. Team Canada lightly integrated with Raptors facilities, financial support, and staff. Nick will be hurting. It will be bittersweet, but I think he'll be pro about it. And honestly, you know what? He's still family. I'll bet you there's not a lot of hard feelings. I think that in some ways he understands this. We may be like kind of more cool with Nick than you may realize. And this is just where the road ended at. And he may not have a lot of hard feelings towards this because obviously he's got to feel like, he owes some things to us for making him who he is. And then also, we really respect and value him for his part in our championship in the past couple years with our team. So I'm pretty sure there's not like a fracture where we hate each other. I'm pretty sure there's not any kind of thing. It's kind of like a sad thing. It's like, well, Nick, we got to let you go. There's just too much dysfunction this past year, and not really like, I hate you, get the fuck out of here. That's not how Masai was. It was really like, I'm sure that he's fine and he's still family, and having him around our building won't be a big deal. Now, if he has a new coaching job by that time in the NBA, that may be different. And it may be that we got to kind of think priorities as far as like hiding shit from him, because he may be part of the enemy's teams now. So that may be something that changes this whole dynamic. But I think at the point where we're at right now, there's no problem with Nick coming down to OVO and running Team Canada practices in our facilities. It shouldn't be. Let's see. Cowboys saying anytime, Leslie. And I hear you and Smooth. True win streak, Lex. Everybody smash the like button. Thank you, Cowboy. Thanks for y'all's enthusiasm and support. I appreciate y'all. We're going to end this up by 3 hours. I'm going to finish this. Nameless is saying, bingo, Lex. That glass ceiling for Becky is a natural testament to her ability as a coach. Bingo. She wants to keep pushing. It's like she wanted to push her way onto the Colorado State basketball team. She wanted to push her way into the WNBA and the New York Liberty. She wanted to push her way into the NBA as an assistant coach for Popovich. She won't push her way into the WNBA and win a championship with the Aces. Maybe she wants to push her way into the NBA as a head coach of the Toronto Raptors and take a position somewhere that a woman has never gone before, going where no woman has gone before, some Star Trek ass shit. And that's what I'm saying. She want to be like Captain Kirk. She coming to Toronto. That's what I'm saying. Go where no woman has gone before. Dun, 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 dun. You want to be Captain Kirk or you want to stay at home, Becky? That's what I'm saying. It's up to you. You could be Captain Kirk. I mean, who would be Captain? Who's the female? Oh, Janeway. You could be Janeway. You could be Janeway, going where no one has gone before. That's what I'm saying. Cowboys saying women are the best thing God created. I'm not going to disagree with this. Men have fucked this world up. We need more women leadership because men leadership is fucked up and toxic in a lot of ways. Bring on Becky. Our team is the third youngest team in the NBA. Our team would start calling her mama. I don't think she wants them calling her mama. And she would say, they are all my children. I don't think it's like that. I don't think it's like that, Cowboy. That's nice. And I know you mean well by that. But I don't think that's the way she would be addressed. I'm pretty sure she's going to be addressed as coach. And that, okay, coach. Yes, coach. Coach Hammond. Yes, yes, yes. None of this kind of stuff, I'm sure, is not going to be happening. Coolcat saying, in university, I took a course that examined women's ways of leadership. It said women's leadership is a cycle from the middle out and then back in. Communication and empowerment is focused on. That's very attractive to me right now, considering the way our leadership is so top heavy with Nick Nurse and overplaying the starters, really doting on the main guys and really forgetting about everybody else. And that's why in some ways I really like this idea of what you're saying, that she starts in the middle and she spreads out and she gets at both ends of the bench. She's not just with the starters, the premium number one guys, but she's talking to the guys that are at the end of the bench, scrapping and trying to make more of themselves in this league. So I really do like that aspect about her. And the fact that she can relate to all levels is very, very good and a very much a strength she has as a coach. So let's see. Shirkan saying, do people realize that there are women officials in the NBA? People listen to them and give them the same respect. Women coaches is not a new thing in men's leagues. A la Julianne winning the NCAA Division III title. Yeah, it's happened on different levels. It's happened on different places, but it just hasn't happened as a head coach on one of the four major leagues in the North American market. And that is the thing. It may have even happened in other places, in Europe and other places, that a woman coached the basketball team or some other team, soccer team or something. So, this is the thing. This is happening in other places. Misogyny and chauvinism can have like blind eyes. Oh, women shouldn't do this and women shouldn't do that. But you're fucking wrong, because they're getting proven that they can do this and they are doing that, whether you like it or not. Just like Fred's going to be on this team next year, whether you like it or not, you're going to like it or not, because women are coming to take jobs and they're good at it. And there ain't nothing wrong with it. Nameless is saying, it's rough brown man. Why are you calling him a rough brown man? Maybe one of my favorite guest appearances of all time. Smooth Brown Man is awesome. He's cool. He's on the all rookie team for this year. It's like Shere Khan, Wayne Strainer, Smooth Brown Man, Daddy Gates. This is like the all Raptor freak rookie team for this season. Seriously. And I'm all about it. Wayne saying, Lex, any more drama stories about us on the coaching staff? I need more drama stories. He's like, he wants more. Well, read those articles, Wayne. Read those two articles, the one by Oren from Friday, and then go back and read the one about Indiana that Jake Fisher wrote on the Bleacher Report from it's dated as May 6, 2021, inside the turbulent tenure of Indiana Pacers Nate Bjorkgren. And this will be enough. I may not have said every little detail from it. I'll put that in the post that in the chat here right now, and you can go look at it right now, Wayne. But yeah, I don't know what more to elaborate on that. Hey, Paul B's here from Wisconsin. How's Paul B doing? One of the Raptor Freak originals from the first year. Are there any free agent potentials that would fit in well for the Raptors this offseason? I don't know. I haven't seen the free agency list. In some ways, that's getting a little ahead, Paul. And I don't know. When that time comes around, we can see like a free agency list, and it's more like part of what the buzz is around the league. Then I'll talk about that more. But I can't look at it because I don't know. I don't know what the list is. Wayne saying Nick Nurse is fine. This is what he wanted. Remember, he started this outcome. Exactly. He'll come back and we'll be like, Nick, we love you. We miss you. You're great, but you can't coach us anymore. He's like, I know. I'm going with Clutch. I'm going to go do my things that Clutch wants me to do. And we're fine too. I really love you guys too. We won a championship. It's going to be like that. It's not going to be like we hate him. I don't think he's going to be upset like Casey was. In some ways, he knows he got fired for a good reason, and he can't be mad at us. Casey had a good reason maybe to be mad at us. He just won Coach of the Year and looked like he looked good, and we still fired him. Well, Nick, it's very evident why we fired him, and he can't kind of have Casey's revenge like Casey did. He really can't. In some ways, he's probably really thinks of us in a really, really strong way. Like I said, firsts are always important. We're his first team that he head coached in the NBA. That's always going to mean something. Monique saying, join our Facebook group if anyone's interested. WStream Lex. Let's go Raptors. Keep at it. Always exciting times ahead. Hello, NBA. Be afraid. Yes, Monique. Check. That what she's saying is we have a Facebook chat that I'm involved in and she's involved in. A lot of us that are on this channel are involved in, and we keep up to date minute by minute during the rest of the day. Like if there's an article or an interview that comes out, we'll share it there during the day. So if you're interested in joining this chat on Facebook and you're on Facebook and you're not in that chat with us, find Monique or I on Facebook and friend us. Either friend us or just look for us and ask to be added to the chat. And then we can have you on the down low and you'll get Facebook alerts when breaking news is happening about the Raptors. During the season, it was a very good place for us to keep people up to date on last-minute injury news as far as who would be in the lineup for games that day. So if you're interested in having more up-to-date news from the Raptor Freaks, join our Raptor Freak Facebook chat. That's what Monique is talking about right there. So either find Monique Lawrence or find me, and you can join. All right, let's see. Cool Cat saying one of the advantages for Coach Hammond is that Canada is more welcoming to her wife and their kids. The family dynamics might be better seeing what is taking place in the U.S. right now. It's weird though. Becky comes from rural, like really kind of podunk, like backwoods kind of place where people are already like that. But her lifestyle of being a gay woman, isn't totally accepted where she comes from in some ways. I don't think this will be a factor. It's Vegas also. You got to remember it's Vegas. It's very much different than Oklahoma or like Texas or something like that. It's Vegas. I don't know if this is actually an issue, but you're definitely right. She would be welcomed and everything would be great here as far as with that. But I don't think this is actually an issue in Las Vegas, though. I think that she's okay there. Cowboy saying true, Mo, and Nameless saying I'm calling him Rough Brown Man because he's too cool to be smooth. Okay, all right, Nameless, you do your thing, man. I'm all right with that. Let me see. Okay, there's a really cool picture of Edge and Christian in Tampa at the Leafs game when they won. They're cheering with I guess a son or something like that. Really like seeing the tag team Edge and Christian from WWE supporting the Raptors as two Toronto guys down in Tampa because they live in Tampa. These are Toronto guys that live in Tampa, wrestlers, and they're going to the Tampa Bay Toronto games in Tampa and rooting for the Leafs in enemy territory, even though they live there. So you go Adam Copeland and Jay Rezzo, real Torontonians supporting the Toronto Maple Leafs in a great victory yesterday against the Tampa Bay Lightning in their home arena in overtime. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo, how sweet it is to have the Leafs in second round. Yeah, and they hit the streets last night. Boy, did they. Like I said, go look at anything Becky Hammond on YouTube and you will be impressed. You will see things that she says and you'll be like, she's our coach. If we can get her to be our coach, oh my God, we would be so blessed and so lucky. The referees for today, Scott Foster, Kevin Scott, and Curtis Blair, are in Sacramento for the Warriors-Kings game. They all favor the Warriors. The Heat and Knicks are playing game one of the second round. Tony Brothers is the crew chief. He hates the Knicks, y'all, just so you know. Bill Kennedy and Tyler Ford are the other two refs, and they all favor Miami Heat as the visitors. So there's your ref report real quick. Let's see. Cool Cat saying, damn, I ended up watching the show. Sleep be damned. I will crash later from working overtime this morning. This topic was too spicy to pass up. You go, Cool Cat. I'm glad I kept you up. That's a good sign that I'm not boring. That somebody can work overtime and work all night and come home and be exhausted, and I'm keeping them up. So that, hey, I'll take it. That's a compliment. I appreciate you, Cool Cat. We love you, Cool Cat. One of our best Raptor freaks, one of the best, one of our hallmark foundational Raptor Freak members, Cool Cat. We appreciate you every day. All right, y'all. I'll be back tomorrow for a Monday memory. I'm not sure what it's going to be. We'll figure it out over the course of today, and I'll come back with it tomorrow. Thanks for watching me. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I'll be back tomorrow. Hey, let's finish it right at 3 hours. Let's go Raptors. Come on, Becky. Please, Becky. Please come to Toronto. It'll be so fun. You want to get to know OG? OG's cool. You'll love coaching OG. He's fun.